Some of the effects produced include levitation of heavy objects. That's very non-trivial. Metal samples turned transparent. Also non-trivial. Metals turned into jelly, and the spontaneous fracturing of metals. The Hutchinson effect has been well documented both on film and videotape, and has been witnessed many times by numerous credentialed scientists and engineers. His findings have been televised in the U.S., Japan, and Canada. They've also piqued the interest from electrical engineering aircraft companies, the Canadian Department of Defense, and the military. Some have said John Hutchinson, well, there's a great controversy surrounding him, from those who believe he walks in the shoes of Tesla, to those who believe that it's not repeatable, it's not good science. He has his critics. And now, also, this evening, David Sirita. David Sirita's first aspiration in life was to become an astronaut. In 1968, David and a friend witnessed a UFO along with hundreds of other people at the same time. After the experience, David grew up as a UFO enthusiast, never living in doubt of the phenomena that has swept the world since Roswell in 1947. His interest in space, religion, philosophy, astronomy, and science led him on his career in related fields. He's worked deeply in high technology, on environmental and humanitarian issues, and as a professional photographer for 20 years. He studied world religion, science, physics, and the paranormal for 25 years. In a moment, John Hutchinson and David Sirita. Stay right there. I'm sure before this night is over, these two are going to solve the world's UFO phenomena question. John Hutchinson and David Sirita. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Art. It's a real honor to be on your program.
An honor to have you. And David?
Good to hear your voice again, Art, and all that great music you play.
All right, gentlemen. John, I think that I would like to begin with you. When you are scheduled to be on the air, I get a raft of email, some of it extremely critical of you, and others thinking that, as I mentioned during the opening, that you walk in the shoes of virtually of Tesla.
Well, Art,
what about all this controversy, John? We're going to cover the Hutchinson effect to sort of bring people who don't know about it up to date. But I mean, with regard to the amount of controversy about you personally, what do you have to say?
well, I know that it's quite controversial. I tend to, main contacts I do have seem to be from the military-industrial complex, mostly from the United States government and from NASA. However, I do get occasional emails myself. Oh, John, you're nothing but basically a crackpot, blah, 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 kind of thing. But
Yes.
look, everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yes, and I'm sure in Tesla's time that he received similar criticism, a total, absolute crackpot. But we don't think of him that way these days, do we?
No, we don't.
And you've discovered a number of things experimentally, right?
That's right, Art.
All right. Let's very quickly, John, what the heck is the Hutchinson effect? What is it really?
In a nutshell,
Sure.
I'll try my best. It's using a lot of RF frequencies, electrostatic energy, high voltage types of effect, and it seems to form at a distance away from the operating apparatus to create a known, there's been papers written up on this by Andrea Sakharov and Rennie Louis Vallée. It causes a sort of interdimensional shift. And
You're now believing it's an interdimensional shift. Please back up for me. You said RF fields, right?
That's right. Frequency fields.
Okay. How big are these fields? How strong?
I used actually a lot of dummy loads to load down, but 450 kilohertz at roughly, I would say, just under 500 watts. But I take a dummy load and bleed a lot of that off.
All right. All right. So you're not using all of it. Some of it goes to a dummy load, but it's way down low, 450 kilohertz. That'd be down below the lowest AM broadcast station.
Yeah,
in
basically
frequency.
that, Art. And then I go up to about 1750 up to 14 megahertz. Then I go and work in the 20 centimeter wavelength.
Okay, and then so you have RF fields, and then you mentioned electrostatic as well, right?
Well, that's right. I run at about, roughly 500,000 electron volts.
500,000.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of bleeds off the main terminal head and collects onto round spheres. This energy is produced by a Van de Graaff generator. The thing you kind of put your hand on, your hair stands up on end.
That's right. Yes.
I'm trying to, so the audience can understand it a bit there. And this bleeds off and fills up all these spheres full of energy, electrostatic energy.
Are these RF fields static or rotating or what?
I use RF modulation.
RF modulation. Okay.
Sawtooth, sometimes CW.
Okay. Thing is, John, it seems to me that what you're doing here is exactly what was described, or so very close to what was described in the Philadelphia experiment.
Well, that's been brought to my attention ever since I stumbled into this effect. Yeah, they suggested I fine-tune the equipment, that I get the exact things happening, and indeed, it seems that,
You are.
yes.
All right. Now, some of the things claimed, John, are that you disintegrated or made invisible metal.
That was a discovery by the Canadian D&D, Dr. Zora, to mention names.
It is.
Oh, okay, Dr. Lauren A. Kuhn of DSTI, the Director of Scientific Technical Intelligence, analyzed the tapes and he found certain frames on the old Super 8mm film had transparent metal objects where you can see through them and see behind them.
Which was exactly what the Navy allegedly was trying to do at the Philadelphia naval yards. They were trying, and for good reason, of course. Our shipping was being sunk on a regular basis, so we had an extreme interest in making ships invisible. And I've had people technically describe to me what actually was done with the Philadelphia experiment, and it's virtually a version of what you just explained as the Hutchison effect. Now, how did you stumble into this, John? What were you working on that suddenly turned into something else?
Well, Art, I've always had a fantastic interest in naval electronics and Tesla machinery. Basically, what I loved to do was study the works of the old-timers and all the research they did. So I got inspired and I had a lot of time on my hands during the 1970s to work on replicating a lot of the Tesla's machines and also some of the older radio fellows like Hertz and them guys, putting together this huge conglomeration of high voltage equipment.
Mm.
So what I would do, basically, I'd turn out all the lights so I could actually watch all the corona effects and sparks coming from the different machines.
But what were you trying to achieve, or what did you think you would achieve? I mean, you're fooling around with a lot of RF and certainly a great deal of electrostatic charge. What did you think was going to happen? What were you trying to do?
Well, to be honest, Art, I was just having a lot of fun, and I'm not kidding. And the effects started to happen, and I honestly didn't think anything of them.
What was the first anomalous effect that you noted, John?
It was a large chunk of bakelite, about an inch thick, roughly 8 by 6, which flipped over and hit a counter, made a large bang, and I turned on all the lights and thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Then later on, when the lights were on and the equipment running, I saw a piece of the metal flying across the room. I honestly didn't think it was important. I thought, well, maybe it's a high tension electrostatic to some type. But then word leaked out and people started to come around taking photographs.
So there are many photographs and quite a bit of old footage, I guess, of these things that you claim are true. Disappearing metal, disintegration, levitation, things floating in the air, that kind of thing.
Basically, tons of that stuff. And the folks would come around and they would try to explain to me that this is important, John. You shouldn't throw out the metal samples in the garbage, as Alex Tezero went out into the garbage can and pulled out these metal samples. I said, I can't use them on my lathe. But John, this is very important, what you're doing. So I said, okay, I mean, gee, I'm not a scientist. I feel, never made the grade 10. But nevertheless, groups started to come around, and in those days they used 8mm film.
I'm certainly well aware that, all of this went on and people did come and look at it and study it. David, I'm not sure why you're here tonight with John. I guess as kind of support, my guess would be you've investigated what John has done. Have you looked into it carefully?
Yeah, I've met John and been to his lab, and where we connected is when I started, analyzing the NASA UFO videos and a lot of, UFO video. It noticed that this probably the secret to their propulsion systems is that you could clearly see these waves of what appear to be electromagnetic energy probing around the craft.
Right.
And because, for example, with infrared cameras in space, the background of space is very cold, and when an electromagnetic wave moves or strobes through the energy in space, the subatomic, particles in space, you get friction and you get a heat signature. So you can actually see the waves, and because of my background in working for nuclear physicists, I could translate those waves, and they told me what they were doing. And then when I found John Hutchison was doing the same thing with steel and causing it to levitate, it was like, eureka, oh my God, that's the connection.
So you believe that the technology, or something close to the technology of what's called the Hutchison effect, is what's used to drive some of these craft that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, how we already know that, Einstein's law tells us, and it's been tested, that matter or mass in its current state cannot attain the speed of light because of the increased mass law. The faster you go,
That's right.
inertia pushes on you, you get heavier and heavier and heavier, and pretty soon you're so heavy that the amount of energy required to go a millimeter faster eventually equals the entire energy of the whole universe just to move at 99.99% the speed of light. So matter in its current state cannot attain the speed of light or go beyond. So that is obviously not how the ETs or these UFO craft are working. But if you transform mass and what I've coined the term, reduce the mass gravity effect by wave transformation, and turn steel into, essentially, it resembles light or photonic energy. You're reducing the mass gravity effect down to zero. And once it's near zero, you can do the speed of light on tiny amounts of energy.
Well, you could almost call that a transporter then, as easily as a spacecraft, right? It's sort of a transporter effect, isn't it? Breaking down matter or changing matter into some different form that can then travel faster than light.
Yeah, exactly. And I have spent great deals of time looking at quantum physics models from the atom and smaller, and studying every physics paper I can get my hand on to find out exactly how that can happen. And I've been lecturing around the country. Last summer in Denver, I lectured, at the MUFON conference. And lo and behold, at these conferences, you got NASA engineers, U.S. Army physicists, all taking down notes. And I meet these guys, and they approached me after, and they said, will you write us a full, detailed physics paper on your theory and how these craft are reducing their mass gravity effect? And I wrote that paper, and I actually sent John Hutchison a copy. And after he read it, he said, "Well, we got to go on the show together with Art Bell because there's a connection here."
Uh-huh. And so that's how all of this transpired. You just happened to send a copy of this theory to John. Yes, John?
Well,
Yes,
no,
right, he did. He did.
Okay.
yeah.
And it's a good paper. It's a well-written presentation.
All right, John, in your opinion, does his theory conform, do you believe, to what it is you've observed in the effect?
Yes, it really closely follows it. I found it actually a very interesting paper, and I was reflecting when I was reading it, I was reflecting the aerospace firm's ideas of putting a round toroidal shape around the lab. They had ideas that they could focus the energy, and I'm very visual when it comes to this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And while reading the documentation, I was reflecting back. I always seem to do that at different times in history, where McDonnell Douglas Aerospace had ideas of getting major funding and putting the lab into a environment with a large toroid around it.
With a large toroid, doing what? What do you think that
the main thing with the lab there, Art, is that I can turn everything on. The effects seem to happen up to 300 feet away.
All right, let's back up
Sure.
a little bit. You remember I mentioned controversy at the beginning of the program. Part of the controversy is that seemingly or many times this effect can't be or seemingly cannot be reproduced on simple demand each and every time. Science loves things that can be repeated and demonstrated and proven, and occasionally or sometimes the Hutchison effect simply does not occur, right?
It's not something you can switch on. It usually takes roughly about an hour, half hour for it to warm up.
Yes, but all of this taken into account, John, there are some times when the attempted repeat experiment, even by you, has not worked, right?
Yes, basically, yes. But
Why?
well, I think it's basically the crudeness of the equipment. It seems always steering all the different controls and that to lock onto the effects. And once that happens, I can average towards the late 80s, roughly about 5 major effects per hour, which is pretty good.
It's
And then I
really
would
good.
leave the lab, then the other team would take over, and they managed to levitate objects also. So at that time, we were doing pretty good.
All right. David, have you seen enough of the hardcore evidence, the videos, the 8 millimeter stuff, whatever it is that John has,
Yeah, I've seen.
to believe that this is irrefutably a fact?
Oh yeah, I've seen enough of the evidence for that, and even better, every single person I've dealt with at NASA, and I'll name a few names here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark Millis, who is the head of NASA's Breakthrough Propulsion Physics Lab. I've been on the phone with him.
Yes.
He's a young physicist, and they look at really exotic ideas over there. And he said, oh, they know all about the Hutchison effect, and they have tried to duplicate it, and they have had some problems. So I said to Mark,
That's my point.
why don't you hire John Hutchison as a consultant to do it if you're having problems? And second, the paper that I've written, I believe, very explicitly details precisely why it works sometimes and why it doesn't others. And that has to do with getting into precise wave science and better, more accurate wave producing machines, as John just mentioned. Another person at NASA who approached me is Alan Holt, who's the head of a huge propulsion division at the Johnson Space Center. And he attends some of the conferences, and he's even lecturing now in UFO conferences. And all of these guys know the problems with rocket engines and ion propulsion drives and wormholes are all too expensive in energy. They're all interested in reducing inertial mass increases as you go faster and also reducing the mass gravity effect because they believe that is theoretically possible. And they all know, they all talk about John Hutchison. So all of these guys, I have confirmed, absolutely know about him, including even at the X conference I just spoke at in Washington, D.C. I'm sitting in the front row, watching Jaime Maussan's presentation from Mexico, which was really astounding.
Yes.
And sitting next to me is an elderly gentleman. He's taking notes. He's very serious, and I'm talking to him all in the physics language about wave transforming mass, and he's chuckling to himself. And I said, "So what do you do?" He said, "I work for the U.S. Army. I'm a physicist." And I said, "What are you doing at a UFO conference?" And these guys are there. They're sitting in the aisles, and they go back to work, and they all end up finding out consequently about the Hutchison effects.
Once again, John Hutchison and David Sarita. So does that answer our friend in Chicago's question? I mean, that I've got it right, don't I, David?
Absolutely. I mean, I believe. I mean, I've seen the waves themselves on the NASA UFOs, the UFOs over Venice Beach, California, even in Nguyen Catay's new film on the Phoenix Lights. The one of the young boys who was an eyewitness saw in the triangle formation, which was estimated at a mile wide, 5,000 some odd feet. They saw waves, and through the waves, you could see this translucent mass, the same translucent mass that Hutchison is talking about in the Hutchison effect. And what happens when you reduce the mass gravity effect by wave transforming mass? It eventually becomes translucent, then it turns to light, and then it disappears in these different spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum that we do not see. And that is why there are so many accounts today, for example, of these digital cameras where people are taking photos on their vacations and they download the photos and there's UFOs in them they couldn't see.
Right.
So also now what's about to get really hot with the Hutchison effect is that we've now got a program in place. I'm working with Jason Martell and he's talking to Roger Lear to test the Roswell UFO metal samples and submit them to the Hutchison effect wave transformation process to see how they respond. Because it's possible this very unique compound, if these really are the true metal samples from the Roswell craft, I predict that they will wave transform more efficiently than a lot of the compounds we're using, in the Hutchison effect today.
You're aware I'm in possession of some samples.
Yes, I am, and I think I remember this being talked about many times in Roger Lear and if these really are the samples and they some of them sound like they are some of the properties about the way they're almost liquid at times. If you expose them to different waves, in the Hutchison effect, who knows? Maybe this is the ultimate combination, a type of compound. I hear there's a lot of silicone or silica in the mixture.
Bismuth, magnesium, very unusual, strange, impossible to duplicate combinations, extremely thin layers, all tested, all really weird. And some of the testing they did involved large amounts of electrostatic charge, very large amounts, and it really, really acted weirdly. We had video up showing how weirdly it reacted, would jump around in the weirdest ways.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. It was wow, actually.
Yeah.
And so we have some of this, and I imagine there are other samples. Are you in a position, John, to actually perform these experiments or simply help others or what?
Well, I would love to help others. It's just that I was doing some levitation experiments for Discovery Channel networks,
Yes.
and it caused a bit of a problem for the local tenants in the area.
Lion, like what happened?
Well, there's stuff moving around, doors moving around, people's ornaments getting squished.
Now,
The mayor of New Westminster actually came here about a month ago with a councilman.
this is very interesting. You were doing this for Discovery.
Discovery and Fox TV.
Were they financing some of this experimentation? Did they put up front money to get the equipment, get it going, or what?
No, normally they will come here, especially in the early, 2000, 2001. And 2003 was my last demonstration, which was a very tough one, but the exterior effects were more dramatic than actually happened here. But they don't, it's basically, I'm always contacted by Discovery Channel, Fox to do a show. It could be in relation to the Bermuda Triangle. The last major adventure I had was building a recreation of the Ark of the Covenant, which has not aired yet on TLC.
I recall, John, that you were intent on doing that the last time we spoke. So you're telling me you have brought that experiment to fruition?
Yes, I have. And it does work. And there's entities, believe it or not.
Whoa,
yeah,
slow up,
Eric.
slow up, slow up, slow up, slow up.
I'm slowing up.
You've created the Ark of the Covenant, or recreated the Ark of the Covenant, I guess would be more accurate. What have you done? What have you done?
What have I done, Art? I've had a small version of it and a large version. And we tested a large version at P&J Metals in Richmond, BC here, and that thing went off ballistics. Massive sparks and ionization effects and entities flying around in the room.
Whoa. Entities flying around in the room.
That's right. That's what Rudy was saying. I think my camera's not working properly, he said. So he double-checked the film when he was filming. Like, this is like 6 months of work we did.
Yes?
For Blue Book Films, who's a contractor for Discovery Channel networks. So the main thing was major lightning and flames and white lights and strange little entities. And I had...
Did they capture this on film?
It's all on film.
It's all on film. Now, this is remarkable.
Of hours of film, Art, and it hasn't aired yet on TLC. I don't know why. It's on the Blue Book website, and they had a little show reel of it, and the show reel now is gone. The only thing that's left, I believe, is on the Blue Book site is credits, and they give the Ark of the Covenant revealed.
Good Lord, John. David, are you aware of all this?
Well, no, actually, I didn't know that this is something new that John was doing. But he did tell me something, and I remember looking at actual photos. In the energy fields, he could see entities actually appearing inside of the fields that were almost angelic looking from what I remember when I saw them. And possibly, that is a way to, when you think of Star Wars and these three-dimensional images of Princess Leia appearing out of R2-D2, it was almost like that. I mean, it looked like you just see this field and this three-dimensional, image just floating inside of the field.
John,
Is that correct, John?
John,
Yeah, that's right.
John, I need to understand how one goes about, in effect, back engineering the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, how did you know enough about the original makeup of the Ark of the Covenant to attempt to duplicate it?
Well, I have art, a lot of teachers, and some of them are like Ben Franklin and many other, like history. I read books. If I'm not sure of anything, I'll read books or.
All right, John, where'd you get the plans for the Ark of the Covenant?
Well,
Which book had that? Which book had that? The Bible?
The Bible. I went by the Bible and other books.
Is the
Yeah.
Bible specific enough to begin to back engineer a technology?
No, not really. I had to go into other areas of research and speculation, and so the other scientific experiments that were done. I'm always fed information from other sources all the time.
Yes.
And there was an experiment done 30 years ago in a university somewhere back east where they did this, and this thing caused major havoc, and they dismantled it. So I went on the premise that, okay, this thing has to be powered by maybe electrostatics. We tried all the other ways with even some of my crystal material as a cement. We tried grapefruit, and then we tried the voltaic piles. That was quite a weighty voltaic pile, getting up to 100 volts. And then I thought, no, maybe something simple like electrostatics. So I supplied perhaps the conditions you'd find in Egypt. Dry winds,
Yeah.
and especially the tabernacle, which is cloth, which would collect a lot of ions in that.
So you duplicated the environment,
Mm-hmm.
and then you produced this high electrostatic charge,
That's right.
and swearing on the Bible, you're
Okay.
telling me
Yes, sir.
you produced effects that included entities that they caught and documented on camera.
Right on
And
camera.
David Sarita, you're standing behind this?
Yeah, I've seen some of the photographs in the field, and they do look like I said, almost like angelic type forms. And I personally seen this stuff with my own eyes. I've seen three-dimensional beings right in front of me, and through 25 years of practicing meditation, something's got to change in your ability to. It's like a radio. In Einstein's four dimensions, you have up and down, width and then depth and then time, and the observer is also a part of that dimension. You could almost call the observer the fifth dimension. Now, if you can, every one of those points in Einstein's four dimensions are wave-particle relationships, and they all have frequency, including the observer. So if you change the frequency of the observer, then what you can observe, the quantity of dimensions that you can observe increases, just like moving up and down the FM dial. So in my experiences, I've seen these things three-dimensionally right in front of me. Humans, even my aunt, when she died, I saw her right in front of me as clear as day. And what I saw inside of the field from the photos of the Hutchison effect reminds me so much of that.
All right, you two. Frequently on this program, beginning when I was doing it full time, we started hearing all these stories of so-called shadow people. Beings or entities, nobody's quite sure, seen kind of in flickering vision. There's a theory that in these modern times, people are staring at monitors for hours and hours and hours, computers. I'm guilty of that myself. I do it. And after spending hours staring at a computer monitor with a frame rate of 60 refreshing per second or whatever, it begins to change the human brain a little bit in terms vibrationally. It changes the human brain a little bit and enables people to see more of whatever it is we're seeing when we see these so-called entities or whatever they are, sort of at the corner of vision. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the gap. Buddha always talked about the gap between the in and the out breath when you meditate. And then you also look at the gap between the peaks and the waves. And as your brain starts to change frequency, information in the in-between points of waves starts to peer through. And that is where these other dimensions are. And I think if you expose your brain, which is a wave machine, to a computer or any electric current long enough, it's going to start to manipulate the wave state of the brain. And maybe those gaps start to get wider and wider, and more of that information starts to come through. When you see one of these things yourself, I mean, even thinking of shadow beings as black, mysterious figures, again, these things can appear black, but it literally could be a much higher frequency than we're used to seeing. So you just get a void, but you do get a shape. You do get an actual form. And if you're able to see high enough in frequency, that form will start to have detail. And what's strange about this apparatus that John has set up is it works the same way. It's a wave field, and that field, it's possible it's acting as a, almost like a medium between those higher dimensional energies and what we see, and it allows it to reflect inside of that field, and that's a communication device. And maybe the Ark of the Covenant was such a thing. It was a communication device to communicate with God. I mean. Uh,
Well, you know,
or demigod or god or whatever we want to call it.
I wonder about the advisability of opening doors like that. I mean, when you endeavor to reinvent the Ark of the Covenant, it seems to me you're inviting the possibility of, well, God knows what.
God knows one. Sometimes, well, that's why I like to study a friend of mine, Colonel Alexander's work on the mental battlefield in psychotronics.
Yes, I know Colonel Alexander well, and I know that he has attempted to observe some of what you've done, right?
That's right, and he's also appeared on several TLC TV specials with me.
All right. No offense, John or David, but if they had video of John creating an effect which produced recordable, videotaped entities in a field, that would be so hot.
Oh yeah.
It would be so hot.
It is art. That's so hot that it
Then how can it not run as a special?
it should. I feel it should run 2
That's
hours
actually
to grade of 1
idea.
hour.
I mean, I'm in the business of making films now. My newest film, Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs, just appeared at Cannes Film Festival, and I've got major studio releasing it in Hollywood, and I'm just going to make more and more of these films, and that's
Great, David, but how could this? I mean, this would be so hot that it doesn't take you to think of, gee, what a great idea. Why don't I do that? They should be clamoring to do that.
I think they would if they were so open-minded, but look at the Peter Jennings special. I mean, they didn't there's real UFO footage out there that I offered the producers of Peter Jennings, and they wanted to do simulations. They didn't want to show the real thing because that would scare people too much.
Oh, you really believe that?
I believe that. I think a simulation is more safe. It's like a buffer zone. You're hearing, eyewitness accounts and testimony and hearsay. But if you're looking at real videotape, of the giant triangles, the Phoenix lights, the UFOs that Jeff Willies is getting in Phoenix, Pat Esker stuff, Mark Olson stuff up in Sonora. I mean, I've met all these guys. This is good footage. And I think and I offered it to the producers of Peter Jennings, and they didn't want to run it. But
That's rather
so a
sad.
story like this, beings in a field, I mean, and angelic like beings, and John has had, some of his own personal experiences, I believe, just from, like you said, staring in front of the computer all day. He's working around these fields all the time. And aside from, the Hutchison effect, there's been some incredible communication experiences he's had as well.
Well, it's interesting, David. Going back some years when I was my ex, who made a film that appeared on Entertainment Tonight called Miracle of the Unknown. She went out and interviewed such people like Tom Bearden, Burkhard Heim, reconfirming all the UFO technology. And it hasn't aired yet in the US or Canada, but has aired many times overseas. I think you actually seen that one time.
I can understand that ABC could have gone farther. They were taking a first step.
It was a good first step.
Now, you've got to really remember that. I mean, they were trying to seriously, for the first time, God bless their souls for doing it, do something on ufology, and they certainly did. Now, I'm not sure that you could go as far as you're suggesting right now without, as you pointed out, scaring the hell out of people. The greater, civilized world out there may not be quite ready for this.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in the UFO world is upset about Peter Jennings. Myself, even though I was only on for 15 seconds, they interviewed me for 80 minutes. And they asked the best questions I've ever heard. I mean, by the way, his producers and the directors were really good at probing your mind and getting the deep stuff out of you. So they have archives of everybody's interviews. But even though we're all upset, the general public got, UFO 101. They got their first step, and maybe step two will go much deeper.
Exactly. And now it's understandable that ufology would be upset because
Sure.
they know so much more and they expected it to be the holy grail of the current cutting edge. Well, it wasn't that, but I don't think you could really do that immediately. You've got to bring people up to these things.
You got to bring them up. And for the people who want to know the deep stuff, you come to the conferences, and it's like going to university for 3 days, and you'll come out of there with, your head in the clouds.
Yeah, or you listen to programs like this.
Or you listen to programs like this. I mean, radio is still far better than television, in my opinion, to tell the truth, because you can spend the time. And television time is too expensive, and I mean, look at news today. It's like fast food unless you watch McNeil Lehrer NewsHour. I listen to the radio and I go on the internet because the radio, your show and George Norrie and, all some of the alternative news sites, that's where you get the details and you find out stories like you were talking tonight about. I didn't know there were, unprecedented tornadoes up in Canada near the Rockies and all up and down the Midwest because they're not reporting that stuff.
Well, it's there to be seen. It's simply not reported, but there are incredible numbers of large storms, supercells, tornadoes, gigantic hail that's just absolutely causing havoc. All right, Sean in Newark, Delaware says, "Hey, Art, news update. I just heard about the severe weather in the Midwest. They're reporting the tornadoes and very severe thunderstorms." That's Ham in Delaware. Sean, thank you, Sean. Yes, I know. It's to those who are observing it, watching it, it's an incredible thing that's going on right now. Now, just before we move on to the weaponization of space with John and David, I do want to ask a couple of things. John, there's somebody who is looking at your website and would like to understand, I guess it kind of goes with what we're talking about, but this portal effect.
The portal effect.
Yes.
It's basically what David was talking about that was captured on Super 8 millimeter film about 1980. And what happened was when I was experimenting, the whole room turned into like a portal and you could see these little entities running around inside of it.
Yeah, there we are.
Can I just sort of reverse my engines for a second? Because it's something rather important I should maybe mention before
Indeed.
pull forward, is that my work was presented at MIT May 21 by Ken Shoulders as in regards to charge cluster technologies. And what Ken does is do the metal samples on a microscopic level, but he can actually freeze in time and space radioactive waste. So we feel that we have a commonality in getting rid of the nuclear problem.
He can freeze nuclear waste in time. What do you mean by that?
Well, he has a way of discharging in a chamber some radioactive materials with high voltage, and it seems to what appears is a similarity on a microscopic level to the SEMs and X-ray diffraction of my metal samples.
But basically what it's doing is rendering the dangerous radioactive material harmless?
Yes. I was with him also in 1997 before. It was actually sponsored by the Star Trek people and Larry King. And we had these meetings where we were talking about Ken Shoulders' charge cluster technologies and how it could be so important in getting it for the use in elimination of nuclear radiation.
Yes, we living near Yucca Mountain would be very thankful. Is this going to be presented to people who count?
Yes, of course.
Well, is it an alternative to storing the mass we have of this dangerous stuff in Yucca Mountain?
I do believe so. I really believe in Ken Shoulders' work. I've seen it. I met Ken, met his teams and that, and we met politicians who are very interested in this.
All right. Are you up on this, David?
Yeah, I've worked a lot in this field in, nuclear fusion and the nuclear sciences, and that Hal Fox at Cold Fusion Associates, part of the cold fusion work, they were able to stabilize nuclear waste by transmutating it into these more stable states where it doesn't emit, the various forms of radiation. And also now there are these new fuel cells in England, a company that I've worked with, can take nuclear waste and just like hydrogen fuel cells, it actually produces electricity. And as it produces electricity, it becomes more and more stable. But rather than using nuclear reactions to produce heat and boil water, this just relies on the photoelectric effect, which is how Einstein won the Nobel Prize, which is the transference of, radiation or electromagnetic energy into electricity. And so there's many methods out there done. Now, US Ecology is the company, one of the largest contractors for handling nuclear waste. When I approached them about Hal Fox's discovery, which is very similar to Hutchison's.
David, let me just slow you down 1 second and ask you, that transformation you're talking about, if it doesn't occur through boiling water and that kind of a heat transfer with a reaction, I'm not understanding how it does work.
Well, the way it works is, like, do you understand the photoelectric effect, which is how Einstein won the Nobel Prize in the beginning, is the transference of electromagnetism either through light or through radio waves or through even gamma emissions or beta emissions, which is just pure electron emissions. What happens with unstable material is it's emitting radioactive waves. And now those waves can be converted directly to electricity. It's very similar to how solar panels pick up photon energy and convert it to electricity. And there are ways of
You're saying the frequency of the emission from this material can be captured the way the sun is captured by a cell and converted to electricity.
yeah,
Same.
absolutely. There are certain nuclear reactions. For the last show we did, I talked about helium-3. Helium-3 doesn't even use heat. It converts everything directly. It produces charged protons. When you fuse helium-3, you produce a huge amount of energy. It's 9 times more efficient than uranium per fuel weight, and there's no radioactivity, and it doesn't boil water like uranium does. You slow fission uranium to produce the enormous heat. You boil water. Whenever you boil water, you lose 60% of your initial energy, and then that's how nuclear power works. And then you have all this radioactive waste to deal with. Well, the waste there's different types of waste. There's high grade waste is the pellets, the uranium pellets. And that stuff is still producing energy and it's still radioactive highly when they, dispose of it. Now, all those radioactive emissions can be either transferred, you can use the photoelectric effect to get the energy out of it. And there's also other methods that people in the fuel cell business are finding that they can extract energy directly out of it.
How much energy are we talking about?
Well, certainly from what I know of this particular company that's in England, I have introduced them to Air Products. Air Products is the largest hydrogen manufacturing company in America. And Air Products is very interested in this particular fuel cell because they can take ordinary garbage, which gives off methane, and they can produce.
All right, I want to understand the scale, David.
Yeah.
When I
Well,
ask how much electricity,
depends how radioactive the material is and how much energy and how many emissions the material is giving off, because you have high level radioactive waste, you have low level waste.
in other words, what would be a typical practical application? Could you put together something that would equal a large electrical plant today, a nuclear plant? What are we talking about?
No, I think these fuel cells are more like things that could maybe run appliances in your home, your computer. I mean, there's many times, and this is kind of funny, but I look at my iPod and I can't believe how much power this thing puts out. And I think there's got to be nuclear waste in this thing. I mean, how does it, you know, how do you recharge an iPod and it pumps out sound like that? It just doesn't make sense. And I think those are the kind of places you can make these small fuel cells, for a single lamp, a computer, things like that. But
All
that's
right, so
why power companies aren't interested in the weight because
I
it doesn't have
understand.
that much energy.
I understand. However, wouldn't such a device in a consumer's hands with nuclear waste driving it be kind of dangerous?
It would, and that's, I think, for that particular transmutation of nuclear waste issue into energy, they're probably going to do it in cells, and then the power leaves the station. I mean, right now, most of our nuclear waste in this country is stored on site at the nuclear power plants because they have not approved Yucca Mountain,
That's right.
and nobody wants this stuff anywhere, so it ends up staying on site. and the workers, of course, get affected by radioactivity. And then we used it in, of course, in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're tipping, we're sending all of our bullets and munitions loaded with, nuclear waste tip bullets, and we're trying to get rid of this stuff everywhere. But it's lower level emissions of radioactivity that are of less interest to the big power companies, but there's still a lot of energy you can extract. And yeah, it would have to be in a safe place. So nuclear waste dump sites would be a place that you could extract energy directly. And also, there are many other forms of waste. I mean, hospitals produce huge amounts of nuclear waste. They're the second largest producer in the country.
And with correct transmutation, could be used for power. All right. I want to
Gotcha.
change subjects here and talk about the weaponization of space. The U.S. has taken an interesting position. Clearly, I quoted an Air Force general, I think, last week, who said we have a lot of very important satellites that we could not afford to lose in a war or a conflict. And many other nations are beginning to build spacecraft capable of destroying our satellites. Therefore, we have to protect them. This is a big fight going on in Washington, indeed the world right now. Are we going to put weapons in space, or perhaps even as I suspect, do we already have them?
Well, I mean, Reagan started this with Star Wars, and it's interesting that Reagan was someone who had a personal experience, with seeing a UFO, and he made the very famous statement at the United Nations, hypothetically saying, "What if we were suddenly facing an alien threat from outside this world?"
Yes.
And that's the president who brought us Star Wars, and now we're talking about, doing it again and going beyond because we're making breakthroughs with technology. So I wonder, is it really the satellites? Is it really, and that's a good argument. I mean, you can definitely believe that because if someone starts taking out our satellites and our telecommunication systems go down, we're easier to take out. But also the incredible amount of UFO appearances all over the planet just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I gotta wonder if what Reagan said, and imagine if he said that at the United Nations, what did he say behind closed doors?
Hmm.
And, is that why we're going to, forward in weaponizing space?
And we are going forward, is that correct?
And apparently, yes. And apparently, when Reagan was, met the same resistance that we're meeting from China and Russia today, they're threatening us if we go ahead with this because it starts the Cold War again. And yet, behind closed doors, Reagan was able to diffuse that because he said, "This isn't really about, we're worried about you guys. It's about the extraterrestrial threat." And once they all saw that, they sighed and realized that was a great relief that if the Americans aren't doing this to actually, um, you know,
You believe they bought that?
well, considering the Chinese and the Russians are taking the UFO phenomenon seriously in their universities and are studying
Okay, let's take it a step further. David, do you believe that President Reagan took them some kind of proof that this was so, that there was a common threat?
Well, it's funny when we all say proof. I mean, we have the Roswell samples, we have eyewitnesses, we have guys like Gordon Cooper who testified to seeing UFOs, and a lot of people don't even consider that proof. We have videotape, in which many people think can be fake, but when you see one of these things yourself, like you have, Art, over the highway, the triangle that came down, and I saw the one in Berkeley in 1967, and Reagan saw one himself. When you see one, all the videotapes in the world suddenly look real to you.
Yes, but David, if I was the president of the United States and I was going to try to convince at that time Russia and now China that, oh, don't worry, these weapons that we're putting up there, they're not because of you, they're because of this other thing, this threat from outer space. I wouldn't expect to be able to sell that to them, David, unless I had more than just words.
Yeah, I think one thing, if it was the president of the United States saying, "Look, I have seen one of these things myself," that would not necessarily suffice, but it would raise some eyebrows. But
David, I'd have to walk in with some kind.
yeah, and this is. I mean, I'm going to give you a case example here. Since my first film came out, the exploring the invisible and the ultraviolet at NASA, looking the invisible, I got a call from a military guy who works in Space Command, which is a division of our military that uses satellites and looks at the Earth and the near space environment in all the spectrum of light, visible and invisible. And he cited incidences to me on the phone where the general marched in because they had an incident where on ultraviolet they could see these balls of light coming in towards the Earth, and then they did a U-turn and went out into space. And the general marched in, confiscated all the videotapes, and these guys all laughed because they said, "We see these things all the time." Now, if they have that kind of evidence from military, surveying satellite systems around our planet,
Yes.
I think they could share that with the Chinese and the Russians and say, look, there is something going on. We are being visited and we need to protect the space environment of the planet. So we at least stand a chance in case.
All right, David, let's see what you know about this. I think most in the audience agree that these craft, or whatever in the hell they are here. Why don't we intervene? I mean, occasionally, individually, for example, I had a call, I don't know, a week ago. A guy said that UFO followed his truck, and he finally got so angry that this good old boy hopped out of the truck and took several shots at this UFO with a 357 or something. Anyway, he shot at the UFO. That's an individual occurrence. I think ill-advised. Are we nationally doing this? I mean, it's ridiculous that our government say UFOs are not a national security threat.
Well, see, I think
It's just crazy, David, because if they're flying in our airspace and we don't control them, they're a threat.
they may even be from another country and black ops programs from Russia or China or, God forbid, the Middle East. And that is a point that I brought up in the Venice UFO case. I phoned the FAA in the Los Angeles airport and said, this thing is not a balloon. We've done balloon tests. Did you guys see this thing on radar? And the number one question is, why weren't you up there? This is post 9/11.
Why are we not intervening? We've
Every
never
single
watched the
thing.
skies this carefully, as you point out, since 9/11. So what's up?
Yeah, and why aren't your jets up there chasing these things around? If we can see them and people are videotaping them over Phoenix all the time, where are you guys?
Yes, and?
And that concerns me because what if they're not from another planet? What if they are from another country and they're probes or they are advanced aircraft and we're not up there?
So there can either be one of two answers. One, they're there, they know they're there, they know they can't do anything about it. Or two, they're our own.
Yeah, and that's when you start to think, or I don't believe we're that stupid. If something is in our airspace, it's either invisible to radar, which when their mass gravity effect is very low and translucent, microwave photons, which is what radar is, they just pass right through them like butter.
Well, let's ask John. John, is it possible that your effect has been not only discovered, but perhaps perfected by the military, and that we do have craft that can virtually change the makeup of their mass and virtually disappear to the human eye or go wherever they go when the effect that you stumbled on is applied?
I tend to believe, Art, that they have replicated it. I get signals and messages from in the early 90s about that basically we let them too close. I mean, this stuff was presented in the Pentagon in 1980, and they came and investigated it. Then the Canadian government got involved also to investigate it. But when I'm trying to retrieve the video stock, especially from the Canadian government, those people don't exist, although I have all their letters and all their names. And it's interesting to note.
What do you mean they don't exist?
You cannot contact them. They deny they were ever here. And I'm trying to go through the Freedom of Information Act to the Canadian government.
These would be people who observed your experiments. Suddenly, well, no, we weren't at John's place. We didn't see anything.
That's right. And they forget, of course, that I have a lot of mail correspondence from these folks. And that I know their names. We corresponded on a very heavy level. I have all this documentation. Some of it's on my website.
That's absolutely.
Art, it's interesting that you're talking about this because in the last 10 months, there's been a really heavy traffic and phone calls to me and emails and letters to me from NASA, from the Pentagon, from SAIC, I'm not sure what that stands for, and
It's Applications International Corporation.
I have all this stuff printed out. It comes to almost 2 inches of material. And it seems to go in waves. And I get, they say, well, can you send us videos? So I'll send videos to the Air Force Division of the Pentagon. I don't want to mention names in case I get hit on the head. Because
Yeah, I don't want you hit on the head. I can't get over that ad. It's like a form of time travel. All right, once again, John Hutchison and David Sarita. David, that's one thing that goes to John's credibility. He does such wild, out on the edge stuff, and then claims these contacts with, NASA. I mean, DoD, big, important people, space-related agencies, that kind of thing. Can you verify these contacts?
Well, firstly, one of the things I did when I went up to film and interview John is he showed me all of the letters that he got from these different agencies, and I looked them over, and they're definitely authentic. I mean, even when I worked for Department of Defense and bomb detection, I got a lot of letters from different divisions of the military, and there's definitely the letters are very similar. I mean, the letterhead, the stationery, the paper, is definitely has the seal of the United States embedded in the fabric of the paper. So this isn't made up. These aren't made up letters. And secondly, for myself, having conversations with people I know at NASA, and like Mark Millis is not someone I know well at NASA. I've had a conversation with him, and he definitely said they have tried to duplicate the Hutchison effect on their own. And Alan Holt, who was one of the heads of the whole propulsion divisions at the Johnson Space Center, is now lecturing on UFOs this summer for the first time at MUFON in Denver, Colorado this summer. So he went from just being an observer, Alan Holt, and studying crop circles and not letting too many people in the agency know what he was up to now actually getting involved because he's becoming more and more convinced. And then third, when you look at some of these different people who are attending these conferences, U.S. Army physicists that I've met with, I am, with God as my witness, I'm telling you the truth. I'd met these people when evidence, the case for NASA UFOs first came out. One of our first buyers was Lockheed Martin, the Aerospace Corporation, and that is another company John has had look into the Hutchison effect. Now, the only thing that's disturbing to me about all of it is I get the same answer every time. Alan Holt says that he's really interested in my theory and the way I can explain literally on a quantum level how to reduce the mass gravity effect of a single atom and how that relates to the Hutchison effect. But he said, be patient, because he said under this administration, the Bush administration, there's very little money for exotic propulsion concept research and actual experimentation.
Well, they appear interested enough. I mean, if they're sending these guys to UFO conferences, they're very interested.
They're very interested. Now, the other thing is, what if there's no funding coming to NASA for exotic propulsion research, but at Lockheed and some of the SAIC is Science Applications International Corporation. They're one of the top 4 defense contractors, and allegedly people have tracked airplanes going to Area 51 out of their airport in San Diego, where their headquarters are. And maybe on a black level, they are spending money on this stuff, but why not? And I asked, Alan Holt at NASA, and John Schutzwer, who was head of international director of MUFON, was also a contractor for NASA, working with Boeing and Gemini days. And the last thing he did at NASA in 1998, he built the Advanced Space Propulsion Lab for Franklin Chang Diaz, the Costa Rican American physicist who was on mission number STS-75, the very famous incident where I attest that there are UFOs appearing in the ultraviolet. Now, all these guys are aware of this stuff, and the problem is, according to NASA and Mark Millis's program, which has a fantastic website, NASA's Breakthrough Propulsion Physics Lab, but it's $50,000 a year program.
All right. Listen. The evidence for UFO propulsion apparently led to the conclusions that John's effect, the Hutchison effect, levitating the cannonball, for example, was utilizing a similar method to produce anti-gravity. Now, after you've seen a craft like I've seen, you realize that you either saw an extraterrestrial craft or you clearly saw the U.S. government with the ability to reverse the effects of gravity or escape the effects of gravity. Or I don't know how you would exactly put it, but there's no question this thing wasn't flying. It was floating. It was defying gravity in some way.
And it's not using thruster engines because it's quiet. I mean,
Dead quiet. Crickets at a quarter mile quiet.
right.
So, John, do you think they might have essentially perfected what you did and are using it now?
I feel they are, because of all the emails I get from different scientists, and some of the scientists appear on TLC shows along with Nick Cook, like Boyd Bushman with Lockheed Martin.
Yes.
And he's kind of a fan of mine who's researched out my work, and he's doing his own experiments, actually. And yes, I have to say they have to do it. I mean, if I could have done it, with primitive equipment, they have massive resources to do it in the national laboratories. I'm sure they're doing it.
All right, David, if they have craft that can currently defy gravity, then how are we to delineate between U.S. government experimental craft and, I don't know, extraterrestrial craft?
Well, I would go to the energy source. For example, the Betty Cash case, you have the severe radiation burns from the victims who were near the craft.
Yes.
And obviously, they're using nuclear fuels like uranium and plutonium and other highly radioactive fuels for their energy source for these advanced nuclear propulsion methods. Because when you reduce the mass gravity effect of a craft, you initially need a huge energy burst, such as Bob Lazar's element 115 would produce, but only for a fraction of a second. Now, once you reduce the mass down to nothing, you don't need hardly any energy to sustain it once it's in that state. But initially, you need these bursts of energy. And today, we have not mastered the non-radioactive nuclear fuels like helium-3. We don't know how, even though helium-3, beckons us with the most profound energy source on the planet, far beyond hydrogen, far beyond uranium, because it's non-radioactive and you don't have all the radiation problems. I think the way we determine between an alien craft and one of ours is the radiation and the harmful radiation. And there are cases even in Mexico recently when Jaime Maussan presented of victims who got severe radiation burns. Now, really advanced UFO crafts from other planets, obviously you can come from another star system to Earth and be exposed to radiation, harmful radiation for that long and survive. You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't make the trip. You'd die before you got here. So there's still a long ways to go with it. I mean, to master the non-radioactive energy sources as fuel.
So you think the radiation is the key to which it is?
Harmful radiation, yes. But again, once you get to the point where you can reduce the mass gravity effect of a craft down to zero or near zero, I don't believe in absolute zeros. You essentially don't need energy anymore. It's not about energy, and I think that's what the ETs have discovered, is that they've been in the same position we are in today. Rocket engines, increasing energy on mass, G-force problems get so difficult. Imagine even doing 1/10 the speed of light, which is 67 million miles per hour, and an incoming asteroid is going to hit you and you got to turn right. A subtle turn, G-forces will kill you at that velocity. And there are even Bob Lazar's theory that they're using gravity generators. I mean, gravity generators are a competing gravity field that the craft envelops itself in. And even though it's a nice-looking theory on paper, when you go flying by a sun or a moon, even again, even a hundredth the speed of light, the G-forces on turns in competing gravity field are going to be so strong they'll destroy you. But if you're zero mass gravity effect, you can turn right and you won't feel any G-forces. And that's how UFOs move. They stop on a dime, they turn right, they suddenly accelerate. And once you're in that state, you don't need these radioactive fuels anymore. You don't need to use your fuel. So if we're looking at an extraterrestrial craft, it would exhibit those qualities. One of our own, I don't know if we're there yet. I don't know. We might be producing the giant triangles. These triangles are being seen everywhere.
Everywhere.
Florida to Texas, they've been up on your site recently. I mean, there's no way those are B-2 bombers. They don't B-2 bombers make a lot of noise, and they're using jet engines. There's just no way. These things are silent, these triangles. They're huge.
The only two possibilities are some sort of, I don't know, a lighter than air ship, or clearly we're defying gravity. What I saw looked very, very solid, but I could have been fooled. It could have been a lighter than aircraft. But as you point out, they're everywhere. They're over our interstates. They seem, that's something that puzzles me, and maybe one of you has an answer. I mean,
Well,
if you had a secret craft, you wouldn't fly the damn thing over the major interstate highways of America.
yeah, I mean, I skydive out at Paris Valley, California, and these guys are pretty strict out there as far as UFO phenomena. And because they recognized who I am, one of them, the owners of the drop zone, came up to me and said they had a huge UFO come right over it's like the house where a lot of the skydivers spend the night. And they went outside, and this thing was dead silent, and it was massive. She said it must have been a mile across. And these are non-believers. These are all military people who like to have fun skydiving on the weekend. And why? Why, if it's one of ours, what's it doing over a drop zone?
Exactly. John?
Yes, it's interesting to mention the power sources. Could it be 0 point energy?
Well, see, 0 point energy to me is when you reduce the mass gravity effect down to zero, you're actually requiring less and less energy to move about, and that's when you start tapping into the 0 point energy field itself. Now, there's a recent physics paper for those real techies out there, written by Don Hodson, called Dirac's Equation and the Sea of Negative Energy. It's in 2 parts. It's the most stunning paper. It was rejected by mainstream physics, and I always look at the papers by the big names like Dirac that are rejected, because mainstream physics knew how to break the speed of light, how to get a spaceship to even levitate. And that would mean they have the answers, and I should be reading their work, but they obviously haven't figured that out. So I read this paper, and this is a top nuclear physicist, and in this paper, he talks about all matter being born out of a singularity called the sea of negative energy. See, matter. I'll use the spiritual model here to explain how matter is born into duality, and also the actual, subatomic level, and keep it simple. I'll keep it short and simple. You go back to the Garden of Eden, and Adam and Eve are told not to partake of the knowledge of good and evil, for in the day you do, you'll surely die. Well, when you take in good and evil is a conflict, which is actually a duality. It's positive and negative energy. And if you imagine the angelic kingdom is in a state of singularity or oneness, there is no duality there. There is no conflict. Duality falls into a lower dimension, and in that ignorant state, it becomes physical. Now, without getting too philosophical, basically what happens is that millions of people take in the knowledge of good and evil. They each define egotistically what is good and what is evil, and they're always different. So we always end up fighting. Now, coincidentally or not, the atom is coated with the same information. The hydrogen atom has a proton, which is positively charged, and an antiproton, which spins negative. So positive, negative, and you have an electron, which spins negative. You have an anti-electron spinning positive. So it's just like good and evil. It's duality. Now, if you can light, the only particle we know of that can bounce off of the Earth that escapes gravity, the true anti-gravity particle as a photon, is single. Now, Jesus says in the Gospel, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. Coincidentally, when you end duality in matter, you become single. And that the only particle in physics we know that is single is light. Now, light has to move through an actual ether, an actual background of space, which itself is a wave. So it pushes against it. It meets some resistance, and it has a limit of the speed of light. But Dirac's sea of negative energy, which is singly charged, light is singly charged, positive single charge. Imagine this sea of negative energy that is singly charged. If you're singly charged, there's no resistance. You don't encounter inertia. An entire space, uniform space pervading the entire universe that is single, because resistance, inertia, is born when you have two waves that are opposing each other.
David, this is really all quantum, isn't it?
It's quantum.
Yeah.
So Dirac's paper is and the sea of negative energy shows the birth of matter from this singularity. Now, if you could flip your UFO, first of all, reducing it down to zero, this is where the real 0 point is, because it's a singularity zero. It's not a dual electric field like we have here. The alternating current that Tesla invented is positive, negative, positive, negative.
Right.
Well, when you enter singularity, you're so far beyond the speed of light, it's ridiculous. In fact, you can't even use it because everything is instantaneous because there's no resistance. So you could conquer any distance. You could go from here to Andromeda.
Yeah, well, that would explain the quantum communication that otherwise is completely inexplicable.
Exactly, because it's instantaneous over any distance. Now, if we can tap into Dirac's sea of, and don't be misconstrued by the word negative energy. It's not negative spiritual energy. It's spinning counterclockwise. But it's singularity that I'm talking about. And a lot of physicists today are looking for something beyond the dual pairedness of the dual state of matter, and they're looking for what's called singularities. And sometimes some people believe they're at the end of a black hole and the end of the Einstein-Rosen bridges, and Dirac is saying that there is a pathway into this sea of energy, and where it is where all matter is born from and it returns. And that may be philosophically what even happened when you consider the resurrection of Christ. I mean, he took physical mass and he transformed it into light, and he could move around, and there are examples of masters in Buddhism and other religions that have done the same thing.
So, why it's not out of line then to say that it is good and it is evil. If you're a religious person, it makes that exact.
Well, yeah, this realm is good and evil, but Jesus is, even in the Gospel of Philip, which was rejected by the church, he says, in this world there is good and evil. Its good things are not good, and its evil things not evil, because he's trying to show you there's something beyond it. Because good and evil is always a conflict.
Yes. The two of you think you understand why the SETI telescopes can't locate a signal.
Right.
Why?
I believe for two reasons. One, they are looking at information in light waves that are too low in frequency. Longer or lower frequency waves, as they travel through space, they collide and share information with other long-standing waves, and they get distorted. And we only have the ability right now, as you know, in radio, to look at information inside of light waves, which is what radio is, in the gigahertz or billion hertz range. We haven't even hit a trillion hertz, and we certainly haven't hit a quadrillion hertz.
So you think we're just not looking high enough?
We're not looking high enough and that's one possibility. But here's something that's really going to blow people's minds. Remember the book, The Secret Life of Plants? That
Yes.
came out in the 70s?
Yeah, of course.
They made a documentary, and this is stunning because the documentary was never released, and I got to see it. A very famous astrophysicist who is working at major universities today, and I have his name written down. He took a telescope and surrounded it with a Faraday cage to block out interfering radiation, and pointed it at the star system of Sirius, and put living mustard seeds at the end of the telescope to receive the light rays from Sirius. Now,
What? Mustard seeds?
sprouted mustard seeds, living.
What does that have to do with receiving anything?
Okay, this is interesting. So he, just like in The Secret Life of Plants, they connected electrodes to the mustard seeds, and they suddenly got what appeared to be intelligent blips and signals.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting?
These are called biophotons, and you can search biophotons on Google and you'll get tons of pages on this stuff. But living photons versus dead radio wave may be able to communicate in this sea of negative energy in real time.
Once again, John Hutchison and David Sarita, and I wonder if what we're talking about here is a real-world quantum effect. In other words, the seeds on the telescope. It sounds wacky on the one hand. Welcome back, you two. What kind of seeds were those again, please?
They were sprouted living mustard seeds, and that's what the book, The Secret Life of Plants, initiated, was to communicate signals.
You're right.
With plants. And even go back to Philip Colonel Corso for a minute, and
or to understand how the plants communicated to each other, as quantum objects have been noted to do through time and space, faster than the speed of light, certainly. unmeasurable, actually. And so this whole quantum thing has been, so many of my guests, David and John, have been talking about this new quantum world we're about to leap into. And so I'm curious, with regard to the mustard seeds, please, what was actually seen through the telescope that was not seen otherwise when looking at Sirius?
It's not the visual that was different. It was the information in the photons coming from Sirius that stimulated the plant seeds, the sprouted mustard seeds, and the transference of how the seeds responded um, into through like the EEG system where you hook electrodes up to the brain and you get signals. That's what was done in the Secret Life of Plants with Clive Baxter. He was the one who started the research and proved that plants had feelings and could perceive emotions.
Okay, but what are you
Yeah.
suggesting?
Well, the mustard seed started blipping, and it seemed like an intelligent signal. Now, the astrophysicist who did it, I'm going to have to get his name and email it to you because there is information about him. He's gone on to do major work in astronomy, but no one followed up on that. Now, isn't it curious that Colonel Philip Corso said that the Greys were half living, half machine?
That's right.
And is there a connection? Is there a reason they were half living, half machine? And also, the human aura also gives off what are called living or biophoton energies, which are now measurable in quantum physics. Is there a difference between a radio wave, which is kind of a mechanical dead wave, which travels at the speed of light, and a biophoton? Now, I propose that biophotons' frequencies are so high they eventually enter singularity at the highest frequency, and that singularity, there is no resistance. And that is why they can travel beyond the speed of light, and possibly the mustard seeds are communicating in real time. There is no speed of light or even 100 times the speed of light. It's actual real time
Yes.
with any distance. And that the information is in the photons coming from Sirius, but radio telescopes can't detect it. They can't pull the information
All right,
out of it.
I'm curious. You said that uh, the scientist involved was able to, he thought, detect some sort of pattern. Do you know
Yeah,
what?
some sort of pattern, and that was in the film. And this was, it's funny, they never, the book was a big success, but they never released the documentary. But there are copies of it floating around, and it's really old, 70s film footage, so it doesn't look great. But when I saw that, I was like, I've made connections to that particular star system many times before in my work with the NASA UFO phenomenon. We all know that's where, the Egyptian mythologies come from the star system of Sirius and the dog star, and it's a legendary star system, and maybe where our, co-creators are from.
Do the two of you believe, John particularly, John, I wonder if you believe that your effect, or something like it, helped build the pyramids, perhaps the Coral Castle in Florida, the things that are so inexplicable. A human could not have done it without some kind of effect.
I have been approached with that question from various people about that.
Now me.
Now you, Art. And it's a good question. It's a very valid question because I was in Egypt and I saw the pyramids and those massive stones from Luxor, from the different areas that we went out traveling. And I would have to say something else was at play there. I cannot envision ropes in that time period that strong that could possibly lift that stuff up. I mean, even the way the rope would hold the people down.
Well, there
What?
is no duplicating it, John, period. They've tried. It can't be duplicated.
I saw a TV show on that.
The single man who did what he did at Coral Castle can't be duplicated. Some sort of effect was used. Does it sound like the Hutchison effect or something like it? Something?
Yes, it does in many ways, Art. This is Coral Castle is quite an interesting, intriguing mystery because I like studying stuff very intently. Like I look at every photograph and pictures and that. I saw parts of the lab and equipment that he had down there at Coral Castle, and I could relate to it.
You understood some of what he was doing just based on the photographic evidence.
Just the photographic evidence of the remaining bits and pieces of electronic surplus, basically.
What about you, David? Have you looked into the building of the pyramids or Coral Castle and tried to understand the power?
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about being able to wave transform even stones or steel and reduce the mass gravity effect, it starts to levitate.
Exactly.
Again, photons are in a single wave state and matter is dual paired. And when the only thing we can see that actually levitates off the Earth are photons, they bounce off the Earth and go out into space. Gravity can bend the path of a photon, but it can't stop it from, leaving the Earth. So if matter can, even become, uh, overcome the differential between positive and negative, one of those gets stronger, the effects of gravity gets less, and it starts to rise. Now, if you can do that to huge stones, that's the secret behind the highest degree masons in Egypt who were able to do this, to build the pyramids. And that would imagine what that would do today. I mean, if we could build, I mean, I know about the Coral Castle, and this man says he's not revealing his secret, but maybe he knows the same thing we're talking about. It's about transforming mass. In its current state, you can't do it. But in its transformed state, imagine, I mean, we could build Lord of the Rings style temples and castles on mountaintops, and even these things that George Lucas is showing in the new Star Wars, cities on the top of glacier mountains. I mean, that's all in the future. That's all something we'll be able to do. And masonry is one of the areas we benefit, which is, building with stones. I believe that's absolutely how they did it.
All right, David and John both. Bob Lazar, I know Bob Lazar quite well. He's now out of town, so to speak, sort of settled down and quiet, not wanting to talk a lot in New Mexico. He stands by everything he originally said. I did extensive interviews with Bob, and his story is always the same. His story is never inflated, but it doesn't have to be. It's fantastic enough, involving element 115. He said this, of course, a very long time ago when element 15 was not on the horizon, as it is now. Do the two of you, I'm sure you've digested the Lazar story. Do you buy it?
I buy a lot of it. I think his formula, the actual physics, a mathematical formula for how you create 115, which I was never, when he first put his formula out, it didn't exist. They hadn't identified 115 yet, and they were still up in the high 90s.
True.
Uranium and plutonium are up in the high 90s, and then you get to seaborgium, which is, Leonard Seaborg's particle, and that's up in the 100s. But element 115 did not exist. And when they discovered it at the University of California, Berkeley, Lawrence Livermore, Lawrence Berkeley lab, it was one of the two. When they created it, it was the formula was almost to a T identical to Lazar's. Now, if he isn't a physicist and a darn good one, I'll be damned. I mean, this guy gave us a formula, and he was right. They made it, but his theory on how the craft were utilizing element 115, I disagree with. I don't believe they're increasing and creating a gravity field in the craft itself.
So you don't believe in the gravity amplifiers?
No, I think what happens is that initially you need a huge energy burst to affect a lot of mass, and then when just like John is using, he uses a lot of static electricity energy, which is ultra low frequency energy.
That's right, yes.
Almost unmeasurable in a wavelength. And then he starts applying a mid-range frequency and then a higher frequency. That's what John is doing.
Very quickly, John, I'd like to understand the effect once underway, once you've kicked it off with a lot of RF field at low frequency electrostatic, 500,000 volts, whatever it is you're using. Once you get this effect underway, how long after you have stopped the energy does the effect continue?
Well, after all the machines are shut down,
Yes.
there's certain metal samples that tend to keep on changing, and on a very rare occasion, it was measured by the Max Planck Institute by Roland Brito and Bruno Bachmann, and it seems that the metal samples are going ahead in time a little bit.
Going ahead in time?
Going ahead in time. They're constantly changing their crystalline structures.
And this goes on for how long?
As far as I know, for years.
For years.
I have one sample here downstairs, and it seems that it's a stainless steel sample. One part of it is magnetic at one end.
Yes.
And it seems to be rotting away. And I can only go by my own calculations, perhaps a piece of stainless steel sitting around.
Rotting away.
Yeah. It's flaking apart, breaking down, and actually rusting.
Huh.
And it seems to me that it could be every year that I've had this sample, that perhaps it's 50 years onto 1 year.
All right. This is again jumping off the cliff a little bit, but yeah. John, you've been producing this effect and experimenting now for a number of years. Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered the fact that you're also experimenting on yourself. In other words, you're within these fields many times. Have you considered the effect on your own biology?
I am into life extension research, and the scientists that I work with, and we've given many presentations and lectures, we're all very healthy. My partner, George Hathaway, is writing a book on yours truly and his adventures with me. And that's why we're trying to get the Canadian government to release the videos taken at the time of 1986. But it appears I'm in excellent health. I am a quite energetic person, and no ill effects to anybody except people that...
But you spent a lot of time in those fields.
Oh, I did, and especially in the 1980s. And occasionally well, since 2000, doing some of those demos for Fox TV and TLC and that.
Any lingering effect on you personally?
The only thing I ever had, Art, was, excuse me, around 82, I had what I called radar clicks, like little shocks in my head.
Yes.
And I actually had to phone my doctor, and he said, well, knowing what you're doing, I wouldn't worry about it. Then I mentioned George Hathaway, and George says, George always talks about these things. It's like every few seconds I get like a shock. Quite disturbing. I could move around okay, but gee, I mean, it was quite disconcerting. And then after about a week or so of that, it disappeared.
Very unusual.
I haven't grown any, like, 6 fingers or...
Didn't Tesla expose himself to a lot of those fields?
I would certainly imagine that.
I feel addicted, though.
Addicted to the effect?
I like to put my hand by the sparks from the Tesla coils.
You do?
I feel it feels good to me. That sounds crazy. That's like...
Yes, a little bit, John.
You know me. But, yeah, something
Right?
like that. Yeah.
Pretty much like that, actually. What, about 500,000 volts?
The thimble on my finger, of course, did not get burned. I just felt that it felt good, and...
You're not concerned that one of these days you're going to plop into a different dimension as a result of all this?
I think it'd be an adventure.
That it would.
It doesn't scare me. I mean, I'm not scared of death or anything like that, and to go into another dimension, so be it, but I try and, behave myself and keep the wishes of the mayor of New Westminster.
Well, I don't know if this will surprise you or not, John, but there aren't too many people who enjoy doing that to themselves.
With a spark?
Yes, not too many of them.
Actually, there's a photo of a gentleman sitting on a massive insulator holding a rod, what looks like with a broom on the end of it, with sparks flying off of it. He literally charged himself up.
Yeah, well, I didn't say that there were not
They're not.
other unusual people out there, John. I simply said there aren't too many who share that particular form of entertainment.
I got you, Art. Yeah. Oh, well, what kind of thing? I'm different. I love it. No complaints here.
All right. So do we not go after UFOs because they're ours or because we made a deal, David?
Well, that's interesting. I saw, again, these, digital cameras, people downloading their pictures when they get home. I saw this one on your site recently that shows this guy took a picture amongst a bunch of geese or birds, and there's this UFO with a long arm towing what appears to be a cargo container, which is, of course, not aerodynamic in shape. Obviously, they're not using aerodynamic principles. They're using anti-gravity. I just imagine these guys are hauling, minerals and possibly, a lot of things that interest them from our planet up onto their mothership. So, and Dan Aykroyd made that proposition that maybe we made a deal in exchange for minerals and certain things that they're interested in our planet for technology. And we might be exchanging ideas like that.
Well, of course, Colonel Corso disseminated technology, supposedly, from the Roswell crash. Now, I can imagine that those in charge of everything, if there really are such people, would be very interested in a sort of a trade that might involve what you're talking about, minerals and such for technology. You really think that's underway?
I think when I saw that photo on your site, I mean, it just looked like it. It looked like cargo being, moved out and to and from the planet. But, looking what John just said about time dilations on certain, effects from the Hutchinson effect.
Yes.
Go to Roswell for a minute and remember that Trinity, the first nuclear bomb, was tested on July 5th, sometime between the 5th and the 9th. You get different dates depending on where you go. 1945. That was the first bomb. Now,
Right.
imagine these craft are hovering around, wondering what these humans are doing. This is a huge scientific experiment, and they're vibrating up in the gamma spectrum or ultraviolet spectrum, as I propose, and they have low mass craft and they're invisible. When you detonate a nuclear bomb, you get an intense burst of gammas and all sorts of different other types of radioactivity. And in higher frequency dimensions, time is slowed down. In lower frequency dimensions, time accelerates. In Einstein physics, also, when you accelerate towards the speed of light, time slows down. And when you slow down, time accelerates relative to that. So time is not a constant. It can be quantified depending on frequency or velocity.
So, David, are you suggesting that we detonated an atomic weapon and brought one of their craft down
Well,
or more?
strangely, on either side of Trinity, slightly to the northwest, you have a UFO crash, same dates, plains of St. Augustine, and then you have Roswell just to the southeast of that.
True.
On either side of Trinity, and Roswell crash is 2 years later, July 7th through the 9th, 1947. Now, that's is it possible that the intense gamma burst, because if they're when two wavelengths collide that are similar frequencies, they affect each other. But if a gamma wave crosses a low frequency waveform, it just passes right through it. So I think that is their weakness. I think high frequency waves and lasers in those frequencies distort their craft. I mean, I can't imagine technology that advanced crashing. I mean, you go from one end of the galaxy to the other, or one end of one star system to another, and you can't fly straight when you're down the Earth and you crash. But an intense gamma burst would, in a higher frequency dimension, may have distorted their craft, and they both crashed on. Imagine the intensity of the explosion on both sides of Trinity. You have UFO crashes. It's very peculiar to me. I'm not saying I know that for a fact, but when you look at the physics of that possibility and what John just talked about, time dilation, when he's seeing particles moving forward in time, and that also means you can move backward in time. That gets really interesting around Roswell.
David, what would you say to John's detractors, those who keep saying it can't be replicated, it's not real, it's all baloney? What do you say?
That's the ultimate question. I believe that the physics is there. I think what John stated is true. He needs better equipment, a far better lab, and much more precise wave measuring devices to actually study and see the wave state of matter as it's transforming and as it goes into levitation.
Again, John Hutchison and David Sarita. Gentlemen, welcome back. I believe that there is a disagreement. I know you wrote a paper, David, on the physics of UFO propulsion reducing the mass gravity effect, and there may be an area here where the two of you sort of disagree on how UFOs move. Is that true?
I don't know if there is.
Well, is there? Let's find out. John, as the man who discovered the Hutchison effect, is it the way they move? Is it the way they reduce the gravity effect? Is that how these objects move? Do you believe?
I do believe, yes, in a way. Because when you consider a very heavy craft and you shield the gravity, like gravity, you need a whole Earth to make something weigh something. And I feel that if you have this type of equipment, you can actually reduce or shield off the gravity pull. There's certain barium compounds or ceramics that seem to do that just a tiny bit. But I feel that inertia can be overcome where you can do incredible speed, and also that you can, let's say, turn 90 degrees at high velocity and not feel anything.
And not feel anything. All right. That
Really, I mean, it's when it gets into the mathematics. Don't forget that I'm very visual with machinery, and when it gets into the mathematics of things, I cannot comprehend math models.
why it's happening.
Visualize the atomics.
Yeah, I understand, John. You're a I don't know. You're a tinkerer, an experimenter, a man hands-on, real machine kind of guy, and not a theoretical physicist. David, do you agree with this?
Yeah, the way I look at John is he's like an intuitive genius. I mean,
Yeah.
he intuited this stuff, and that's why, I've worked for major physicists my whole life and been on a fly in the wall and have read everything everything I can get my hands on. And I believe Dirac's equation of the sea of negative energy is probably the most profound quantum physics paper of our time. And
Was Tesla the same kind of man
yes, I think
who intuited a lot of what he invented?
he wrote a paper on a unified field theory that was not very popular, but Einstein apparently read it and said it was beyond his ability. Whether it was beyond Einstein's ability or he just didn't understand it, it was a unified field theory. And now the theory of everything or unified field theory is what we are seeking, which essentially the theory that unifies is all the four major nuclear, forces, the strong forces and the weak forces into one. And to merge electromagnetism and gravity into a single theory was a desire in Einstein's time, but no one could prove how to do it. Does matter have an electromagnetic charge on it? And Einstein basically said no, because it's basically dead. You have a proton and antiproton pair canceling each other out, and an electron anti-electron pair canceling each other out. So the overall charge is zero. But I found if you put it on a full four-dimensional model, they don't cancel each other out to zero. There is a differential between them that is so tiny and so weak, it's very easy to miss it. But I predict that very weak differential between particle-antiparticle pairs, which you can't really see when I'm talking on a radio show, but on paper, in my paper, I demonstrate where it is. I believe that is the particle that everyone's looking for right now, which is called the graviton. We haven't found it.
David, is there enough evidence with regard to John's work to justify, I don't know, some agency of the military perhaps, or I don't know, DARPA, somebody to come in with money and fund this man and see what he produces?
I think we should put together a whole team, John, myself, and, big, hot, top NASA physicists and engineers. And when I proposed that to John Schuessler and also to Alan Holt at NASA, they agreed. They said, we would love to be spending money on stuff like this at NASA, but we can't get the money under the current administration. But in the black area, I believe that we are actually making a mistake in a national security sense for the risk that another country could figure this out first. And that means we lose air superiority. I mean, if you can fly craft like this and make right angle turns at 1,000 miles an hour, and
That's right.
F-18s are going to be obsolete. The B-2 bomber, the stealth is going to be obsolete. And if we really don't have this stuff yet and someone else does.
How much evidence is there that others are working in this area?
Well, I have found, there in the Indianet Daily, there's this defense contractor there that's studying UFOs. How far they've gotten in duplicating anti-gravity, I don't know. The only reports in physics journals today are only the repulsive gravity effect, where you have two positive charges or negative charges repelling each other. It's not real anti-gravity. Hutchison, to me, all the evidence of years that I spent in the UFO phenomena point to that John's work is the most closely resembles what I'm seeing in the wave transforming in UFO cases, and that we should be spending a fortune on it. We should be building $100 million lab. And I approached, guys like Joe Firmage, who sold US Web for $1 billion, and not a word out of him. I mean, I've talked to him on the phone, can't get him to do anything. So then you got to go, well, if the free-thinking billionaires like, Bill Gates and Paul Allen are too scared to put money in high-risk stuff like this, then our government should, and that would be DARPA and different levels of the military, the Air Force. And you just find...
All right, what it comes down to with DARPA and people like that is they say, okay, prove it. And they want you to set up a demonstration, and they want to see it before they, open their wallets. They will open their wallets, but they want proof.
They want proof, but they also will do it if Lockheed Martin approaches DARPA and says, I want a contract to do the Hutchison effect. If SAIC does it, if they request the money. But if John Hutchison and I request the money, we're going to get...
I understand.
Well, I don't know. So it's basically our job to convince the defense contractors to apply for a contract to get into this stuff, and that is kind of what I've started.
Yeah, I was going to say, David, you're a smart guy. How do you go about proving John's work to anybody at all, any middle person even?
Trying to show show it on paper, and this paper is kind of, for me, was a landmark because I finally got it down on paper. I'd be glad to send it to you if you want to read it. And it really does show the feasibility of this actually happening. And the Hutchison effect is instrumental. Now,
All right, again, it's a 50-page paper on the
50-page
propulsion
paper.
and physics of UFOs,
Yep.
reducing the mass gravity effect, right?
It's that and breaking the speed of light and beyond, and also it involves, advanced telecommunications, being able to look at light waves much higher frequently than we're looking at today with new types of Tesla coils. And there's a lot of things in the paper, including invisibility, how to make mass go invisible. But I believe it's going to happen. I mean, what I was told is to be patient, wait for an administration that does want to spend money on exotic research. I mean, that's why America, all the great scientists came from Europe to come here, including Tesla, to do their work because in their countries, no one would fund them. The Avro Aero story, which is a very famous story in Canada, Avro Aero Corporation was doing almost Mach 2 in real F-wing fighter planes before we did here in the United States. The Diefenbaker dismantled the program, and all of the engineers got hired by Boeing and NASA. They were all Canadian engineers who developed the first F-wing fighter planes here in America and started doing Mach 1.5 and approaching Mach 2. And I think John Hutchison is really an intuitive genius, and he should be put in a lab with, like he said, he doesn't do the math. But he has proven on an experimental model that this is worth pursuing. And
More interestingly, he actually builds these things. That's, I think, the fascinating thing about John.
That's better than physics on paper. And now that he's proved it, even if it doesn't work every time, find out why. Do tests and spend money on it and put them in a lab. And when I put that idea forward to John Schuessler, who worked at Boeing and NASA his whole life, and also these new guys over there, they're up for it. They just can't get the money out of, NASA can't get money.
Well, I can certainly tell you that if you could make a piece of metal invisible, if you could disintegrate a piece of metal, either way, and you could prove that, and you could show that, you would be funded to the hilt.
Ultimate stealth technology is to make mass invisible, not just invisible to radar.
Absolutely.
But it's slow. It's like people will see a videotape and they won't believe it. And that's right. Well, they get in their car or take a trip and come to John's lab. His lab is crammed into an apartment.
I know. And but here's the important question. If they do come to John's lab for a demonstration, are they going to walk away saying, I just saw it with my own eyes?
Oh, I think they will if they spend enough time there, for sure. Again, do we want to just turn a blind eye to something that could mean the loss of air superiority for the United States? It's not worth it. There's too much point into saying spend 2 months if you have to up there to study it. I mean, spend the time, spend the money. Don't look at it superficially. Don't breeze by this. It's not worth losing this position. I don't want to see us lose it. I don't want to see Islamic countries with this kind of technology. I mean, we'll lose our freedom. We won't be able to believe in God or not believe in God, be an atheist or be a Christian or a Buddhist or
Well,
Jewish.
let me ask you this.
Freedom is the greatest thing in the world.
Yes, it is. And let me ask you this. Why do you think that our country, you referenced this administration, but why do you think America is, I don't know, kind of on pause with regard to its space program, with regard to the kind of research we're talking about tonight? All of this, we're kind of on pause. What happened?
Well, I really should ask these questions to some of the people I know who are frustrated the same, because there are scientists at NASA who want to spend money on this themselves, and they have their own advanced concept for propulsion, and they can't get funding. It's a mistake. It has to do with Congress not. I mean, John Kerry didn't even have a good energy strategy. He didn't get in the field and research what's happening with solar power and new breakthroughs in hydrogen fuel cells. He didn't get in the field and crawl on the ground and say, I've done my homework and here's the energy strategy. Congress is the same. They're not spending time getting to know what scientists are up to. We've got geniuses, stacks of them in this country who have amazing ideas, and you're not getting any money.
And you think John here is one up.
I believe that, and that's why we decided to do the show together, because I believe all of the evidence points to John's work being so important. It's equal to the Avro Arrow story in Canada. I mean, the next big revolution in aerospace is anti-gravity, and no one, even whether it's accidental or not, or if he can't do it 100% of the time, no one can do anything like this. There's no one on the planet. There's no lab on the planet, unless we are proposing that in Area 51 and these, black project areas, they truly have mastered anti-gravity, and then they're not worried. They look at John and they go, well, we've already done it, and,
It's kind of like cold fusion. I mean, Hans and Fleischmann, they couldn't get funding here. They had to end up going to Europe.
Isn't that is so, to me, it disgusts me that we are losing the pioneering spirit that this country was built on.
Well, maybe John should be in Europe.
Well,
have you thought about it, John?
I lived in Europe for 2 years, met a lot of scientists. That's how I was mentioning the Max Planck's group and the Fraunhofer labs. And they were willing to fund things, but things got political. And I returned to Canada here to find that my entire lab, like I wasn't always in an apartment. I always had the industrial sites.
They sacked your lab, didn't they?
They sacked the whole thing, and it's the Canadian government. See, what happened with the Canadian government's visit is that they basically semi-classified it. When I tried to pursue for getting all the tapes and that, they said, well, this is a matter of national security. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service will be looking into my situation.
You were told that, or do you actually have that on paper?
Yes, I do.
You do?
I have all this stuff on paper.
And you've seen that, David?
Yeah, I've seen all the letters and I've read them. I had a whole pile. I had photocopies, and to me, Canada, I mean, these guys up there. I mean, the Avro Arrow story. Prime Minister Diefenbaker, they were doing over Mach 2. He dismantled all the planes because the Americans told him that they weren't interested in doing Mach 2 because we had missiles. He destroys the whole program, destroyed all the airplanes that were built up there, and then all the engineers get hired by Boeing and NASA down here, and they revolutionize aerospace. Yeah. John should be swallowed by the Canadian government right now, but no one up there,
No, I mean, it's like
they're taking the back seat.
NASA approached me some months ago, and it was the Kennedy Space Center, Duke Folenstein, forgive me for mentioning your name, but they were having a meeting after seeing my videos, and they said that, well, the director felt that at this point we have to focus on other projects. Basically, they just didn't seem to have the funds.
Mm-hmm.
And now...
But part of that, John, being honest, comes from this irregular ability to repeat your experiments. Just like Pons and Fleischmann, really.
I was able to produce it for Fox Television, for Griffin Film Productions, Peter Put Camera.
That's impressive.
I've done it for CPD News, for many film people over the years. It's just, how can you say it? It's like it's blocked somehow.
Blocked.
I don't know if it's on a higher level, or maybe it's my own way I look. I'm not in a business suit. I don't keep notes. I'm always...
I understand. You're...
They say, well, John, you don't keep notes. And I said, well, that takes the fun out of what I'm doing. I'm sorry. I'm just...
It makes it so difficult for people from official agencies that live on tracked paperwork and all that sort of thing to get anything from you. That doesn't mean what you're doing doesn't have value or isn't real. It's just that without documentation, they have nowhere to go. They're oriented that way completely. They're bureaucrats.
They are. Well, that's why some of the scientists I know, they understand my situation and they perform the tests and write up documents and papers.
I guess, David, this may be where you can help John out. John is working at one level, but that's sort of a dimension away from the people that actually could jump in and help, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I really believe it doesn't matter if he can't reproduce it every time. Some of the earliest scientific breakthroughs we ever had in history, including radio, couldn't be duplicated every time in the beginning until we perfected it. That's why he needs a team around him. He needs top scientists, top physicists, and engineers working with him and in doing it on a very large scale. And I think that is just a tragic mistake to not do it in the Western world. I mean, it is really tragic.
So
And we will pay the price. If we
Yeah.
lose air superiority, we will pay the price.
We almost had that happen in 1997 through the good graces of Prince Hans Adam Liechtenstein that was to fund me and some scientists down in Bodega Bay to set up a massive laboratory where the scientists could come in and study the effects. But unfortunately, due to the letters from Prince Hans Adam, nothing ever came in. No money ever came this way except endless letters and Christmas cards.
All right, John. Well, you do what you do, and you do it very well. And David, I think you can be of great assistance to John by perhaps helping to get some scientists who can do enough documentation to properly present to those who would open their wallets.
Yeah, that would be good.
That's what you're trying?
I'm in constant contact with John, and whenever a door opens for me, I try to find a way in there, and I'm always talking to these people and trying to convince them. But I haven't seen, I've even been approached in UFO conferences that by people who claim to be multimillionaires and they're going to give me money, and
All right. Listen, you two, I can only wish you both well. John, in your endeavors, I wish you well, and David, thank you for helping out.
Thank you, Art. It's been a pleasure.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to yet another Dreamland. Very, very enjoyable series for me to do, as most of you know. We barely made it with our guests, but we did. And we've connected with Linda Howe, who is, believe it or not, at the Philadelphia airport, where I guess she just zoomed in. And that was a nail-biter. And our guest, of course, is going to be Bud Hopkins. Been looking forward to this one. UFO investigator extraordinaire, author of Intruders and Missing Time. So it should be, to say the least, quite an evening. I'm Art Bell. This is a sort of an unusual program. And if it is your first listen, I suggest you sit back in an armchair and prepare yourself, because this is some pretty fascinating stuff. Now, all the way to Philadelphia, literally, I guess, at the airport, and Linda Howe. And hi, Linda, you're at the airport, actually?
Yeah, Art, I'm in a relatively noisy phone booth out here. I'm going to hope that we're going to be able to transmit all this well. And if you hear what sounds like the loudspeakers or the music of an airport behind me, that's because that's where I am.
Understandable.
I was in Eureka Springs this weekend at the Eureka Springs conference that discusses the large complex UFO phenomenon. One of the guests who spoke for the first time in 28 years about his experiences as a television producer and writer in 1972 to 74 with the Department of Defense, working on a documentary called UFOs Past, Present, and Future, was Robert Emenager. In my new book, Glimpses of Other Realities, I show a drawing that he used in the first edition of the book when it was published in 1974 and was never published again after that. And he explained to me some time back, and I'm going to play an excerpt actually with more details here in a minute, that this drawing was made in the presence of Department of Defense officials who had the photographs in 16-millimeter film taken from two cameras at Holloman Air Force Base in May of 1971, when there was what appeared to be a pre-arranged landing at Holloman Air Force Base in the White Sands Missile Range area. And what I'm going to play for you right now is an excerpt of his telling, really for the first time, the blow-by-blow as he understands what happened.
All right, Linda, let me ask, are you able to hear me, Linda?
Yeah.
Did you say a pre-arranged landing?
Yeah, it assumes, it implies that there was some communication.
All right, very good. This should be an interesting report. Go ahead.
Here we go. And I want you to know that the cord from my tape recorder and the cord from the payphone don't overlap. This will be about 5 or 6 inches from the speaker on my tape recorder. So let's see how this works.
All right,
okay,
let's try it.
he said that there were three ships, which was filmed by a ground camera and a helicopter. He even gave me the names of the cameramen. But none of them seemed to be in difficulty, or because of the way it's sort of watered down.
It's not falling leaf.
Kind of a falling leaf, and it landed at the base, but it seemed like there was some understanding ahead of time. I'm not sure about because they said they dispatched a couple the F-104s, I think, it was big, monstrous. It's wonderful to see them, flying around, but to guide it down or to secure the area, they did have an alert at the base, and I understood that I was told that the commander of the base, fire chief, several other people were there as the craft landed and were waiting, and at the opening of the door, and out came, I guess, 1, 2, or 3 Roman tight-fitting suits, which did not look quite human. They had those cat-eyed look to them. Very, very thin mouth. They had almost like a Sumerian-looking hat, as a matter of fact, rope design, and even Sumerian-looking face. It would look like that to me.
With a very large, almost beak-like nose.
Yes. That they were met and taken to, there's an area there where the buildings are no longer exist for that. Because when I went there, I asked where are these buildings. I said those 2 barrack buildings were torn down. There's no significance to that. They're always tearing things down. And with the craft, the one that did land was taken down to the end of Mars Avenue and put in a very small hangar. This is what I was told. They were met by an Alfonso Lorenzo, at least that's the name that's on one of the documents I have.
He was supposed to be a biologist or an electrical engineer?
He was an X-ray technician or something, radiology, was in that field. But I never heard that he was really on TVY for foreign technology. And he may not have been a tech sergeant at all. But that's what I was told. But he was apparently he was an attendant to one of these beings, took care of whatever their needs were.
What was his impression of that?
Well, he was somewhat freaked out, and he's the one who contacted his friend at North to be on the alert and look for the film that would be coming. He said, I know there's got to be filmed. And he kept corresponding with Paul.
Paul Schrader.
Yes, Paul Schrader.
Do you ever get any kind of a personal human reaction to these things?
Yes, he did. His comment was that to him, they appeared like scientists, like educated scientists. Now, I don't know what kind of communication was done, but it seemed like there was no problem with communicating.
They held in the drawing in your book, there was that
There was a
rod.
staff, which is a half caboose, is it?
It looked like, a coil around a staff. And
He did mention what that was. That was a communication sort of ability to also, I imagine, to paralyze or to do whatever. It was like their leadership role. And it's very interesting that we have, all through our military history, we've had the short baton as a symbol of leadership and power. And I kept wondering, I wonder if this is something that we, in our ancient past, have copied, like little humans that we are.
All right, I want to double check. Is this coming through at all clearly?
Well, not very, Linda. Not
that's
very.
what I'm concerned about, and it's such an important interview.
I understand.
That maybe what I ought to do is just give you a quick summary on this, and then next week do it again in the finer audio abilities I have in my office.
All right, let's do that, Linda. Give me a summary because it sounded fascinating. What was the essence of the report?
This is the very first time that Bob Emenegger has described the beings in any detail and using the term Sumerian. He said this was the context within which they were described, the same kind of pleated headdress that rose over a bulging head. He said the eyes did have vertical pupils. He referred to them as cat eyes. They were holding a rod in the left hand, which is in the drawing, that had a coil roping around it, that he said our people understood to be both a communicator and something that they could use as a paralyzer if they were threatened in some way.
All right, this is fascinating, Linda, but I'm a little bit lost. Exactly where and when did this occur?
This was May 1971 in a portion of Holloman Air Force Base. 3 discs, this is the part apparently you could not hear easily, came down at this particular air base. They were met by a party of us. There were 3 beings. One of those is the Alfonso Lorenzo name that he was referencing, who was in some scientific capacity there, who was saying that his impression of these beings was that they were scientists. And he was describing that in this meeting of these beings that, for all intents and purposes, seemed to be like the so-called old ancient Sumerian gods, at least in what we have in replicas of stone statues. They and their craft was transported for reasons that he said had something to do with a repair, but he was not sure if that was a cover story and there was some other reason, but that this was put on some kind of a truck covered with a tent and transported to a building at the end of a street that was called Mars Avenue. This happened in May of 1971, according to Emmenager. They were filming at Holloman and filming the documentary in which they described this event then as a hypothetical sequence, because that's what the Department of Defense told them to do. And that film was first broadcast in the United States in 1974, about 3 years after the event. For those who have seen that documentary at conferences or maybe on television in late night, it was one of the last projects that Rod Serling did as a narrator. And in it, it is this sequence at Holloman that he is now describing in detail for the first time.
All right, what I'm curious about, Linda,
documentary they described as hypothetical.
Yes, Linda, what I'm curious about is why is he just telling this story now?
Because he feels that he can.
Because he feels that people are ready for it, do you think? Or because something else has changed? In other words, you say he feels he can. He feels people will accept it, or that it's time, or what?
Well, he does not, apparently, because he said he had checked with some of his still contacts in Washington about speaking at the conference and making these descriptions, and no one said that he could not. So this is, in a way, it is a step forward beyond the documentary 20 years ago. It's gone from hypothetical to the description of a reality.
All right. Well, there is yet another reality, and while we're on the subject, Linda, I know your book is out. Why don't you tell everybody how to contact you or get a copy of the book?
Well, thanks, Art. Glimpses of Other Realities. You can get information about ordering from Linda Howe Productions, Post Office Box 538 in Huntingdon Valley, Pennsylvania, and the zip code is 19006. I'll repeat that one more time. Post Office Box 538 in Huntingdon, Hunting, D as in dog, O-N, Huntingdon Valley, Pennsylvania. And the zip code is 19006. And next week, I will redo this so that you can hear his interview clearly. And I'm sorry I got trapped late on an airplane in an airport.
Oh, no, that's quite all right, Linda. And if it had been any closer, I suppose you'd have been calling from in flight.
I would have had to.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thanks, and my best to Bud Hopkins.
All right, take care, Linda.
Take care, Art.
That's Linda Howe, literally at the airport. And sometimes that's the way things work out. I thought she had perhaps spaced out on the time change that, of course, we all went through, the 1-hour time change. Well, on a summer afternoon in 1964, Bud Hopkins and 2 others watched a small, round, metallic craft maneuver in the sky over Cape Cod. This daylight sighting marked the beginning of his interest in UFO phenomena. But his first nationally known investigation did not take place until 1975. Well, I understand that. You need a while to think about an experience. Then a UFO apparently landed less than a mile from Manhattan, was observed from various vantage points by a number of witnesses. Bud Hopkins' carefully researched account of this incident appeared in the Village Voice Cosmopolitan magazine and elsewhere, and was covered extensively by television and radio. Bud is an accomplished author, probably the nation's premier UFO investigator, and he has appeared just about on everybody's important television show. And I'm sure that you know him, so he doesn't really need a great introduction beyond all of that. Let's go to Bud Hopkins. Bud, good evening.
Good evening, Art.
Are you able to hear me okay?
I certainly can. I hope you can hear me.
Just fine. Clear as can be. Bud, first of all, welcome back. We had you on Area 2000. Now the program is syndicated, and we're sure glad to have you back again. Listen, what did happen? I speculated there a little bit. I had my own sighting, Bud, and I had to sit back for a long time after it and think about it. Was that the case with you?
Yeah, that was the case. And, of course, I didn't think of myself at any point of someone who was going to do investigations. I was making my art and exhibiting, and that was my life. And it wasn't until this friend of mine reported an object landing near his car and little guys getting out, little figures and so forth,
right,
in a quite dramatic way that I just simply thought, I've got to look into this. And so I think I was sort of pulled into this business by circumstance rather than by choice. But I think you're right about sitting back and thinking it over. You see, no one can overestimate, really, the resistance all of us have to what this really implies. This is the biggest change, the biggest event in all of human history.
It is,
if it's going on. And the evidence is there, and it is so absolutely shocking that people who have the experiences are sometimes even more hesitant to accept their reality than the people who are just reading about them on the outside, because it is so shocking.
Sure. As you got down line from your experience a year or so, Bud, did you find that you began to question the experience yourself in your own mind, or did you find it became more clear to you?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say depending upon the day you might have asked the question, one or the other might have been the answer. There is a strange way in which if everything's going well and the world seems orderly and the edges are nice and clean, you just convince yourself it just must have been something. You don't know what it was. It must have been something. So you convince yourself as best you can that it's just something that's going to go away because it has to have an explanation. On the days when the imagery comes back in your mind vividly and God forbid you've read about somebody else having a similar thing, it comes back to haunt you. This really happened.
Right.
And so I do think that the ambivalence is bound to be there. You know, one of the things, Art, that bothers me a great deal is TV programs or whatnot, when they're dealing with people who've had abduction experiences. They will say so-and-so claims to have been abducted.
Right.
No one, but very few people will step up and say, I had an abduction experience, I claim this. What people really say is, this happened to me, it is so confusing, it is so upsetting, it's totally real as far as I'm concerned, but it just can't be. I'm having trouble even believing it.
Sure.
So therefore, it's a long way away from a sort of a cold-blooded, clear-eyed claim for anybody.
Well, maybe it's easier for the storyteller, no matter how it is, how real it is to the individual, Bud. Maybe it's easier for the storyteller to, in essence, give themselves an out if the other guy hearing the story says, "Boy, what a bunch of baloney."
Yeah, well, I don't think it's so much the fear, although that does enter into it, the fear of ridicule. It's the fact that if you accept the reality yourself, what this does to your whole belief system about virtually everything in the world.
Yeah, but there's a lot of fear about the listener and how they're going to react. I remember after my experience, I thought, do I say anything or don't I say anything? I finally decided to, but I was in great fear, Bud, about what people would think of me.
Yeah, that's true. Well, this is, excuse me, I've just finished writing an article, which I'll be publishing fairly soon. I'll send to the MUFON Journal. And the title is Losing a Battle but Winning the War, something to that effect.
Yes.
The basic point is that we're winning the war about bringing this material and this phenomenon, the abduction phenomenon, to more and more serious mainstream attention. Matter of fact, just last week I had Susan Spencer here from 48 Hours doing some work. They're going to be coming back next week on a 48-hour special. But I mean, the New York Times, Time Magazine, I've been interviewed recently by, a lot of very fine mainstream people. We are winning the war for simply the idea that this has got to be taken seriously. Whatever idea about it you want to have, whether you think it's some completely strange, new, modern psychological aberration or whatever, or whether you feel that these events are real, still more and more people are coming to the conclusion you can't just sit on the sidelines without looking into it. But the battle we're losing is the fact that a particularly virulent group of what I call true believers are people who believe that this cannot possibly be true. In other words, they have a very narrow belief system. These people like to think of themselves as debunkers or skeptics or whatever, but there's a very narrow group of them who have set about almost single-handedly to make a climate exist, to bring about a climate of opinion that makes it almost impossible for serious people with a lot of risk to come forward and talk about their experiences.
Sure.
That battle we're really losing. I've worked now with maybe 450 people, something like that, one-on-one, who have had abduction experiences. And one of them was a NASA scientist. I was just approached the other day by my seventh psychiatrist who's had his own experiences, police officers, military, and so forth. Actually, a person I'm going to be working with shortly, her father was up for an Academy Award recently, a major category. These are people from all walks of life who now, of course, if they did come forward, it'd be extremely important for the credibility of the whole issue.
Right. But I was going to ask, what happens to a NASA scientist who claims or claims publicly that he was abducted?
Well, might be looking for a new job. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I would say to any NASA scientist in a situation like that, don't go public, because the climate that's been established of ridicule by these virulent reputation trashers, really,
sure.
is such that they are trying to create a climate in which nobody can come forward and talk about this objectively in terms of personal experience without enormous risk. And to show you the level of the risk, I've received 2 letters, 2 different people, women, who had explored their experiences, and now we're in the divorce court, and their husbands were trying to get custody of the children on the grounds that the wives were crazy because they believed they'd had these experiences. You can imagine, if you were a neurosurgeon or if you were a police lieutenant, would you ever come forward and talk about that under the present climate of ridicule?
No, I don't think so.
I advise people not to.
It's really amazing that this many do, and if you get a chance to talk to them first, you say, no, don't do it.
I actually do. Now, I'm involved in an extremely important case here in New York involving witnesses to an abduction that was evidently put on for people to see. I mean, a very important political figure was involved as a witness, and it was a kind of a show for this person, I believe, as the inferences you make from the evidence. And there are numerous witnesses, including a new witness that I had just recently uncovered. But the point is, I have given the advice to these people not to come forward because the skeptics are ready to savage anybody who reports this kind of experience.
Well, I was about ready to ask you for some names, but obviously that's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, can't do it. And that's a big problem. That's a battle which we really are losing.
How big a person are we talking about, Bud?
Well, we're talking about, it's hard to say, let's find an analogy. let's say, the importance of the level of, let's say, a former Secretary of Defense of the United States, a former Prime Minister of Great Britain, something of that level.
Oh, that's
we're talking very, very high.
Yeah, that's.
But the point is.
All right, Bud. Listen, the point is we're at the bottom of the hour right now,
okay.
so let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. My guest is Bud Hopkins, and this is already fascinating stuff. You're listening to Dreamland on a Sunday night from the CBC Radio Network. Another Dreamland. My guest is Bud Hopkins, and he really ought not need anybody's introduction, and he really doesn't. He is the nation's premier UFO investigator, author of Intruders and Missing Time, and talks about all that sort of thing, and he's telling us now about a fascinating case, actually, involving somebody up high who's had an experience, an apparent abduction, and has been interviewed recently by 48 Hours. And, Bud, I want to ask you about 48 Hours. Have you noticed any sort of sea change, Bud, in the way 48 Hours and other programs are coming at you? In other words, are they more serious about the subject?
Absolutely, Art. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I believe that this really began, the change began back in '87, because there was a simultaneous appearance of my book Intruders through Random House, Whitley Strieber's book Communion through Morrow, and Light Years by Gary Kinder. I've forgotten the publisher, but it was a major publisher. 3 books came out at the same time, taking the subject very seriously, and they were published by major publishing houses. And at that point, there was just no way that the press could totally ignore this, and things began to change at that time. I was favorably reviewed in the New York Times and the Washington Post and places like that. 2020 did a piece and so forth, plus, lots of other things. But the point is that the public is extremely interested in this, because I think there is a subtle awareness in this country that this has never gone away, that the subject just the evidence is there, and that there's an effort on the part of the government and other people to keep this quiet, and people just want more and more to hear about it.
All right, I'd like to understand, Bud, what you can tell us about your own success. In other words, you are regarded, so well regarded throughout the mainstream media, and why is that compared to others who are ridiculed, frankly, and laughed at times? Why?
Well, I don't think maybe you should ask the press to answer that question instead of me. I can just tell you what I tried to do, and that is I try to never make any assertions beyond those that I feel the evidence can really support in a very clear-cut way. I tend to sit on aspects of the phenomenon which are more outre, more peculiar, which I cannot really support so well by clear-cut evidence. A lot of people want to go with the most dramatic story they can find, which of course then makes it sound as if, even though they may be very sincere and actually have some evidence for it, but it makes them sound a little bit more like the supermarket dreadfuls, those little papers, than serious individuals. And I think that I can say I haven't really had to retract anything that I've written over the years, simply because I've been very careful. And I think that carefulness comes out because in people's response, and they feel that, well, here's somebody who doesn't sound wild and crazy and does marshal his evidence, and perhaps he should be attended to or listened to. I think that's perhaps, I hope that's the reason why I have received more attention on some of these subjects from mainstream people.
All right. What about people like Phil Klass? Phil Klass I'm going to have on the program in debate in a few weeks. How has Phil treated you? Evenly along with everybody else, Bud?
The man has lied, as a matter of fact. You see, when we talk about balance and Philip Klass, it would be as if you were having a program on politics, and supposing I were Senator Lautenberg, say, and for balance you got Lyndon LaRouche.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand. I'm going to have him on with Stanton Friedman, though, and Stanton can hold his own.
Well, he can hold his own, but, years ago, Mort Saul said that he defined a liberal as a masochist who will buy and read everything a bigot publishes. And I've always thought of Philip Glass as essentially a bigot. There's no sense of his having an open mind on any of these issues. And just to show you what's the typical situation, why I can say these very harsh things, and I don't say harsh things about many people, but as an example, he wrote a book attacking me at great length and attacking a number of abductees, Charles Hickson, Betty Hill, Kathy Davis, many, many different people.
Sure.
Attacking the entire phenomenon, and had never interviewed or spoken to a single solitary person that he wrote the book about.
All right, let's look at motivation for a moment. There are those who say he works for the government, he's part of the disinformation campaign, or do you think it's just a personal thing with him?
Well, I don't really know. I shouldn't even say. If he's working for the government's not getting its money's worth. Let's put it that way. I don't know what his problem is. I think he adores the publicity. But at any rate, I'd just like to make one point very clear, just as an example of the way he operates. He started attacking abductees, and he doesn't do this in any kind of even attempted a gentle way of saying, well, maybe these people are misguided or something. He implies everyone is a liar and a crook. This is his basic. Recently in the Times, he said, he was quoted as saying, these people aren't crazy, meaning there isn't a mental problem.
Right.
They're just little nobodies. This is the only way they can get on the Oprah Winfrey Show, which I think is, of course, a wonderful piece of self-description on his part.
I'll ask him about that.
But at any rate, that's not the voice of a scientist. That's the voice of a mad fanatic. And let's always remember that Santayana defined a fanatic as someone who, when he loses sight of his goal, redoubles his efforts.
Yes.
And this is the point I'd like to make. He started attacking abductees a long time ago, saying if they really had these experiences, they would report them to the FBI. Which is kind of funny. If you're Charles Hickson and you're in Pascagoula, Mississippi in the middle of the night, how do you find the FBI?
Absolutely.
You go to the local police. But at any rate, he said the reason they don't report to the FBI is because there's a federal law against falsely reporting a kidnapping, which would imply that they're aware of that law and therefore since they've made up the whole story, they're afraid to report it.
Right.
Well, of course, to report it to the police there's a state law always against falsely reporting a kidnapping too. It's the same thing. It doesn't make any difference. You don't have to bring in the FBI. But years ago, under the Freedom of Information Act, we got an internal FBI memo describing an abduction reported to it in 1967. And copies of that were sent to class, of course. Meanwhile, when I did the Oprah Winfrey Show with him one time, the only time and I will never do it again, the only time I ever appeared with him, I handed him a copy of my letter to the FBI reporting all of the cases that I had been working on and demanding an investigation.
Oh, really? How do you react to that?
Well, he was, of course, his immediate thing was to counterattack and say, well, you should have done it earlier,
Huh.
And, of course, it was an exercise in futility because the letter I got back from the FBI was exactly what I expected. Dear Mr. Hopkins, the FBI does not look into such cases. Please report it to MUFON, etc. Any rate, the basic point is that as recently as 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, something like that, someone was interviewing him and he went into his FBI routine again and said, maybe because of the law against it, maybe that's why, to this day, no one has ever reported a UFO abduction to the FBI. Now, that is an outright lie, which he knows it to be a lie. I don't know what's eating the man. He certainly seems to be an unhappy human being. But I wish you well with your experience. I think I've talked as much as I want to about this man.
Yeah, that's fine. My next question would be a really broad one, Bud. What is it, in your view, which is and has been for years now been seen in our skies? What are all these things? How many of them would you say are legitimate, possible extraterrestrial visitors of some sort?
Right. Well, the first point is as to what they are. I mean, obviously, none of us know what they are in any kind of absolute way. We know what they aren't. Yeah, the word alien defines something in terms of what it isn't. When I'm in Mexico City, I'm an alien. That's anything about me. The basic point is they're not from Nebraska or wherever. I mean, they are an alien phenomenon. Therefore, what we can say about their origin and their nature is always speculative. And I always quote, to show the impossibility of getting at it correctly, Scott Rogo once made the remark that he didn't, I think he must have regretted this. He was a good man and died far too young, but he did make this little slip, and he said he didn't believe that UFO occupants were extraterrestrial because they were not doing what extraterrestrials would do.
Oh, and how does he know what?
Well, that's just the problem.
Yeah.
So when people get into arguments about, I think they're interdimensionals, and somebody says they're time travelers or they're extra, whatever, I just sort of slink away from the argument. We know that they're not human. What do we know about them? We know that they obviously exhibit intelligence. They have a humanoid appearance. They have obviously a technology which is thousands of years ahead of ours. They seem deeply interested in us. They are deeply foreign to us in their sense of not really understanding human emotions. We know many, many, many things about how they behave, but as to what the bottom line is, what their goal is ultimately, what they're going to be doing a year from now, 20 years, 100 years from now, we have no way of knowing.
You are okay, but you are nevertheless convinced that they are in one of those categories, whether
Yes.
it's interdimensional or it's extragalactic or whatever.
They are physically real at least some of the time. Now, they seem to be able to dematerialize, virtually disappear, and so forth and so on. Whether you want to invent a term called interdimensional, or whether we want to just say it's an advanced technology, you can flip a coin. It doesn't really make any difference to me. But the point is that they represent a non-human intelligence from elsewhere, which is of enormous advancement over us technologically and so on.
All right, we are a commercial operation, so we're going to do a little of that right now, Bud. Relax for a second. We'll be right back to you.
Okay.
All right, my guest is Bud Hopkins, and if you've been listening, you well understand what the subject matter is. We'll be right back with more of it. The Gold Road.
Some calls tonight.
Yes, we are
very interested in that.
Yes, well, they're coming up in the next hour, Bud.
Good.
Absolutely. Are these friendly beings, or are they... what are they? In other words, we see one of these things. What would you advise a person? Walk up and offer your hand, or run like hell?
Well, the truth of the matter is you're probably not going to have any choice one way or the other in this. They seem to be able to control the situation as they need to. Now, the basic point about this, which is extremely, I think, central to understand, is that all of our science fiction films and the simple stories and so forth have always dealt with visitors from outside, extraterrestrials or whatever, as one of two types. Either they're going to come as conquerors, body snatchers, etc.,
right,
or they're going to come as saviors to clean up the environment and close up the hole in the ozone layer, etc. They're either going to be, in other words, gods or devils.
Yes.
And neither one of those descriptions fits what we're getting. What we're getting is, we might call a third world, a third force. They seem to have their own agenda. Their own agenda does not involve any kind of causing of deliberate pain or deliberate hardship or taking over the world or anything of that sort at this point, because they've been here for a long time, and I have abduction cases that go back to 1929. They could have done an awful lot of mischief had they wanted to in the meantime. And, of course, in all of that time, there's absolutely no sign they've done anything to help us out either. Nothing stopped, for instance, the Holocaust. Nothing stopped our dropping bombs on Hiroshima. Nobody stopped the Korean War, the Vietnam War, or the carnage and the genocide that various factions have practiced. Since then, nobody stopped the spread of AIDS, the problems of cancer, the difficulties with our planet, the environment. They seem to be bent on their own purposes, which are not malevolent or benevolent. And that's a very tough one to understand.
All right, so then maybe they're closer to actually just monitoring what we're doing.
Well, they seem to be monitoring it, but they seem to be taking material from us and taking from us with as little disruption as possible, it would seem, as little deliberate disruption. The involuntary disruptions, the side effects of what they're doing, are truly horrendous. I don't think they understand the the terror and the confusion and the self-doubt and the family disorders and dysfunctions and so on that follow in the wake of what they've been doing over these years. But I don't see that those are intended results. So they are taking from us our genetic material, our DNA, our particular genetic makeup, because it seems, and this is the basic theme of my book, Intruders, and really this has been replicated and is accepted by virtually all abduction researchers that I know of. They are picking people up in childhood and picking them up again at intervals throughout their lives as objects of study. And they seem to be taking sperm and ova samples and genetic material in what is apparently an attempt to create a mixture of themselves and ourselves, a hybrid being. And quite along with that, they seem extremely interested in understanding our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings about one another, our sense of relationship with one another, love we feel for one another, for our children, and so forth. All of those wonderful human things they seem to lack, and they seem to be very anxious upon to acquire them.
Well, as you look at their behavior, Bud, would you say they're more likely, let's see, how can I put this? Would you say they're more likely our creators, or they are tampering with what has been created?
Boy, that's a tough one to answer. I mean, we're out in real deep speculation. I mean, there are a lot of people who talk about them as our creators and so forth. The idea being that we must have some common genetic roots for a hybrid program to work. I really don't know how to answer that. My feeling, though, Art, actually, is that on Earth, females carry their babies for 9 months. The fetus is in their bodies. And when they give birth, there's a tremendous sense of connection, of bonding with their children. If you imagine some kind of developed species which no longer reproduces by that method, which no longer has females that go through the discomfort and warmth and everything else of carrying a child inside the body and giving it nurturance and so forth, if they have evolved past that and they somehow need that, they feel that perhaps they've reached some kind of evolutionary dead end. And there are reports that would suggest that we can't, again, we're in speculation.
Okay, again, that it is they have reached the dead end.
Yes, exactly. They rather than us. I think they're envious of us, to tell you the truth. I think that they're gaining spiritual and emotional nurturance from us at the same time that they're taking, forcibly, I should say, genetic material.
All right. A lot of people speculate in order to do that, there was with our government or somebody a deal made, Bud, a long time ago, some kind of a technology swap for genetic tampering permission or whatever.
I think that's totally without foundation. I think it's even kind of ludicrous, just on the ground that if all we've gotten out of it is some stealth technology, as people allege, stealth planes manage to cost an inordinate amount of money and don't even work very well. I don't know what we've gotten out of it. I don't see anything that we've gotten out of it that any kind of quantum leap in technology. I wouldn't, on the other hand, say that we haven't perhaps found wreckage if they have had accidents and acquired that wreckage and tried to reverse engineer that wreckage in some way to learn what makes their equipment go. But the idea that, I always used to think, under the previous administration, I always sort of made a joke about it, that I always saw the idea of small gray men with clipboards standing in Dan Quayle's office with a list of children they wanted to abduct that week, or aluminum siding salesmen or whatever. I mean, it's just totally foolish. They can do whatever they want to do. They don't have to ask any government permission from anybody. I think that kind of theory gets foisted upon us because a lot of people who look into this have a natural paranoid tendency. And I don't mean that in the strict clinical meaning, but conspiracy theories are wonderful for a lot of people.
They abound.
And, of course, you understand paranoia is a wonderful thing because it instantly organizes what's otherwise chaotic. If you and I have a flat tire in the afternoon and lose at poker in the evening, we think we had a couple of bad breaks, but the paranoid will tell you who did it to you and why.
That's right.
So the point is that if there's a lot of paranoia about the UFO phenomenon, there's, of course, tremendous paranoia, and some of it obviously very deserved on the part of belief about the government. So if you can put the two together and say the two are working hand in hand, we've got a kind of very satisfactory thing.
All right, you almost speak as though there is not a government cover-up. We're close to the top.
No.
There is one.
Absolutely. But there's a big difference between complicity and some kind of a deal that where the government or some branch thereof is quote-unquote allowing the aliens to abduct thousands and thousands and thousands of our citizens daily.
So, in other words, you think the government may understand that it is here and that they are here and even have evidence of that, but not really know what the story is themselves?
Absolutely. I think that their knowledge is far more extensive, I'm sure, whatever branch this is, than my knowledge or anyone else's. But the point is, what can they do about it? I've used this example again and again. If all a president can say is, ladies and gentlemen, they're here and they're flying around, they can outfly anything we have, and they're taking our people on these 1 and 2 and 3 hour abduction events, medical experiments, sperm and ovum sample being taken. They erase people's memories. We have no idea what it's ultimately leading to, whether they're going to be friendly or not. We don't know what this is all about. There's nothing we can do about it. Thank you. Good night. We'll talk about it when we hear more.
So in other words, why say anything? You're just going to scare a whole bunch of people. And
could you imagine being in the bond market when something like that dropped?
No, I cannot. Bud Hopkins, hold on. We're going to take a break, top of the hour, then we'll come back and take phone calls. This is Dreamland. On a Sunday evening, I'm Art Bell. My guest is Bud Hopkins, nation's premier UFO investigator. Get close to your telephone. Get ready, because you're about to have an opportunity to speak to UFO Network. And we own the night or evening, whatever day part it happens to be. My guest is Bud Hopkins. And as the man just told you, those are the telephone numbers. The telephone lines are now open. Bud is our nation's, I believe, premier UFO investigator. I'm honored to have him on the program. Bud, are you there?
I certainly am.
Okay.
And if I may just make a comment, because we do live in the real world too with all the rest of this, I'm sort of astonished at the heavy-duty right-wing bias of the news reports we're getting. It's really quite a program. It isn't so much news as a little sermonette about how bad anything liberal is. I'm surprised. But anyway, I don't want to short-circuit what we're talking about. But we do live in the real world, and these other things are important to us, too.
They really are. And does the twain ever meet, Bud?
Oh, yeah.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the twain meets in the sense that these experiences, and we're again dealing with the whole abduction phenomenon, these experiences have such powerful effects on people's lives that there's no way that your day-to-day existence is not affected very subtly by what's happened to you. Now, just to give you a quick example, if these experiences have happened in childhood, and that's where they seem to always start, versus abducted as a little child, and you're 5 years old and you wake up and you can't move, you're totally paralyzed, and you feel there's some strange figure that's come out of the closet or whatever with his huge black eyes, and you feel yourself floating or whatever, and you don't remember all of the experience. You come back with a cut on your leg that wasn't there. Maybe you're upside down in your bed, or maybe your pajamas are no longer on, they're on the floor or something, and all those signs of physical problems. And you start calling out for help for your parents, and your mother says, you just had a bad dream, get back in bed. And you try to say it wasn't a dream, it was real.
Right.
What happens, of course, is a terrible kind of split develops between the child and his or her sense of trust of adults. And if the adults begin to feel maybe something like this really is happening, they begin to feel a tremendous sense of impotence, the helplessness in protecting your own families. And much of this can remain unspoken. And it does not help anybody in your day-to-day existence, whether you're talking about your first-grade teacher or your friends at school. You're afraid to let them know that these strange things are happening to you, which you think, am I crazy? Is this me? Or what is this? Sure.
All right, but one other thing. You brought up politics, so one question, then we'll go to the phones, and that is, this administration, they've revealed an awful lot about the nuclear testing and a bunch of other baloney that's going on. What kind of hopes do you have that they're going to release information or what they know about UFOs?
Well, my hopes are slender, sad to say. I mean, we have been hearing day after year after year after year, this is the year and they're going to come clean and so on and so forth. I honestly don't see how they can do that without really terrifying the country. They've put themselves in a completely terrible position by the government cover-up program, because by denigrating the experiences of literally millions of people, they're really saying you didn't have these experiences. You either made them up, you're a liar, or you're mentally ill. It didn't happen. Some problem psychologically, and this is, of course, very much like on a national scale what I was describing within a family,
sure,
where the parents are telling the children, "This didn't happen to you. You just had a dream," and the child knows it wasn't a dream. The people who've had these experiences know that the government is lying to them, and of course it means that they have no place to go for although we're trying to supply that as best we can with our limited resources. Numbers of researchers and mental health professionals are turning around to do this, but to help people as best they can. Enormous damage, and of course if they admit now after years of lying about it, as I said, I wouldn't want to be in the bond market when this happens. So they're really in a spot.
Right. All right. Let's take some phone calls. On our toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening. Where are you calling from, please?
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon. All right. Go ahead.
Well, I had a recent experience, and I was just wondering how familiar this is. Not too long ago, I had just gone to bed with my fiance, and it was quite late. It was about midnight, and I felt as though something had entered my room.
Mm-hmm.
And I opened my eyes, or tried to open my eyes, and my vision started to just kind of blur, and then my hearing went out, and I was completely paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And all I really do remember seeing is something kind of dark, and not too huge, but kind of large.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember trying to yell or scream for my fiance, and all I remember being able to do is kind of mumble and groan a little bit. And then not too long after that, he was shaking me, as if he was trying to wake me up.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that had happened, I still couldn't move or hear or anything. And then there was like this loud wind in my ears.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to get up and scream and tell him to turn on the lights. And that's basically all I remember, except for that the next morning I woke up and had a bruise across my shoulder that hadn't been there before.
No. Well, this is something that should definitely be looked into, and we have some people in Portland. You're very fortunate to be in a city where there's a very sensitive investigator whose name I don't want to give over the air here. This is what I would suggest you do. If you write to me, this is the address for anyone who wants to describe an experience. Just write to me, care of IF, just the initials IF. It stands actually for Intruders Foundation, but just say IF.
Okay.
Box 30233.
Okay.
And that's New York, New York. And the zip is 10011.
Okay.
Now, if you write to me, and we will put you in touch with a very skilled and helpful and very, very warm person, an investigator in the Portland area who has had these experiences herself, and she has a support group and people who can be of help. But your experience should very definitely be looked into.
All right.
Well, I have another question. Does this usually happen because not too long before that I had kind of a sighting. I'm not too sure exactly what I'd seen, but it was definitely something not usual or out of, kind of...
All right. Listen on the radio for us, please, ma'am. Is that typical sighting and experience?
It's not necessary. Many people have these experiences without remembering a sighting or without having had a recent sighting. According to the Roper survey, it would suggest that perhaps more people have had abduction experiences than have had UFO sightings. We used to think of the abduction as a kind of a bizarre, very minor aspect of the whole phenomenon, but now I think it's, of course, the central purpose, and UFOs are, as it were, the getaway car. And as I pointed out, we spent originally, before we accepted the idea of abductions, we spent many years trying to get the license plate number on the getaway car without having figured out what the crime was.
Right.
So UFO sightings are not necessary for someone to have had these experiences.
All right. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening. Where are you calling from, please?
Good evening. This is Fritz from Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Yes. Okay, Fritz, go ahead.
Now to a very serious, sensitive subject about the alien. Way back in 1965, I learned about two alien federations on a cosmic doorstep. Now, the kind ones with a democratic, utopian, free will belief, and the not-so-kind ones with a socialistic, I'm your leader, you will follow me system. What I want to say is that for hundreds of years there has been a great conflict over who will connect with this solar system. Now, my question to Bud is, have you heard in your research run into this conflict about the two alien races out there who want to see this take over the Earth sooner or later?
All right, thanks, Fritz. Well, we've got the left and the right in this country. It's kind of a question about extragalactic politics.
I would say that what's been described here is essentially, with all due respect to Fritz, it sounds to me like the kind of projection that we get from people who want to put this in the duality of gods and devils, gods and demons, and so forth, that I was talking about earlier before. I haven't seen in the 18 years I've been doing this kind of research, I haven't seen any sign that we have different groups doing specifically different things. Now, we have different physical types described from time to time, but they very often are seen in the same ship doing the same kind of work with human beings that I've been describing.
Do you think that they are in contact with each other, aware of each other, or could we, are we being simultaneously contacted or sporadically contacted by many different groups and different origins?
Very hard question to answer, Art. What I said, though, essentially is, as an example, in one California case, the woman reported small gray figures with huge heads and black eyes, and a tall figure that was more insect-like with huge eyes. People have made associations with the praying mantis look and so forth. And in that same ship was a relatively speaking normal human being, but they were all cooperating in these genetic experiments as I've been describing. So it would seem that we don't have different groups doing different things. I suspect that although we have no idea where the place of origin of these figures are or whatnot, there doesn't seem to be a different groups doing different projects.
Kind of a consortium, then.
Yeah, it would seem to be.
All right. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Well, good evening. I can't believe I got through.
You have. Where are you calling from?
This is Bill in Albuquerque.
Yes, Bill.
And I wanted to ask Mr. Hopkins if he's the one that wrote Missing Time. I read that book, and I forgot it completely. Is he with the alien?
You mean you had a missing memory about a book, right?
Yeah, about your book. No, my question is brief. I want to know if you think that we have experimental aircraft that flies as fast as the speed of light.
All right.
All right, Mr. Bell's guess.
I would doubt that very seriously. I'm not a scientist, but I would doubt very seriously if we have anything that remotely approaches the speed of light. I think that there are undoubtedly aircraft under in the planning stages, advanced aircraft of one sort or another, and also there is evidence that has come up actually in Nevada and so forth that would suggest that perhaps there's been some reverse engineering of crashed UFOs, which would suggest attempt to try to get something to work. But the idea that we've got anything that can go near the speed of light, that if somebody had that, NASA would be out of business and somebody would be making gazillions of dollars at it and so on. So,
what about modes of travel, Bud? I've heard a lot of people talk about the bending of time and space and leap across that bend. Have you heard a lot about that?
There are lots of theories of that sort, and we really don't know what to make of it. I mean, I don't. As I say, I leave that kind of speculation to other people. I'd rather stay with the data and away from heavy speculation. It's fun to do, but we know that this is going on in the lives of many, many millions of people, actually. How they get here, how they travel, where they're coming from. I mean, the idea, for instance, that they are necessarily locked into a planetary system somewhere is not necessarily true. I mean, it's highly possible since we have had up in space a Skylab at one point, and space stations are going to be built by us within not too long a period, orbiting Skylabs, and one could imagine that an environment could have been constructed, and it could be movable through space, and so they might not be tied down to a planet. Who knows?
All right, good. Well, I think that's why you're so highly regarded. You don't, on a moment's notice or a second's notice, leap into the unknown.
We don't. Yes,
that's
don't know.
Good. All right, good evening. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Where are you calling from, please?
Lawrence Laboratories, Livermore, California.
Very good.
Well, I'd like to contribute by helping Bud Hopkins and your audience understand the nature and the origin of UFOs.
All right, sir. Are you on a speakerphone? And if you are, could you pick up the telephone?
Well, I can't do that because I'm in an unsecured area, and I don't want my fellow workers to know tonight.
That's just fine, then. Go ahead. We'll put up with it.
Just before Einstein passed away in the 50s, he was working on the time continuum theory and trying to explain it. UFOs are simply our descendant scientists from the future who are visiting us from all points in the future and studying mankind without interference.
And on what basis do you conclude that?
Well, Lawrence Laboratories in Berkeley is working on some of the projects.
Well, the idea of time traveling, of course, has been brought up many, many times as a theory, and I don't see that really changes anything, frankly.
I'm really taking a chance and even talking about it.
I understand, and you are giving us news. Can you give us some idea of what technologies you're talking about, please?
Well, the different crafts that you see are simply the different time machines, modes of travel machines that are from all different points in the future. They're simply scientists who are coming back with a policy of non-interference, studying the history of mankind. That's why they're taking DNA samples to the future to find out what has gone wrong with mankind in the future.
That's quite incredible, and
they're not extraterrestrials. They're from right here.
They're from right here.
That's why we see ships, as you call them, materialize and dematerialize, because they're simply going in and out of time.
The issues, the descriptions, of course, here of time traveling, I mean, it fits one of the modes of explanation of the UFO phenomenon that we've had for a long, long time, along with, ideas of interdimensionality and so forth. So what you're saying is, as a theory that's been around a long time, the news would be, if you can say officially, that this is some kind of government, that Lawrence Livermore Laboratories is working on something.
There is a point in the future where mankind learns to travel in time.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and it's less than 200 years.
Uh-huh. Well, the issue would be if some kind of statement could be made that would be official about this, that would be big news.
Maybe this caller would like to comment on the paradox problem, since you seem familiar with what...
There is no paradox if there's non-interference.
All right, good enough. All right, I've got to run, caller.
Well, there is, of course, an amazing amount of interference. Lives are being interfered with daily. Suicides have resulted in this. In other words, the interference is extraordinary. So it isn't a question of let's say, deliberate interference in the sense that governments are being changed or altered or something, but lives are being altered on a vast scale. I don't feel it is possible to say there's been no interference.
But that was a remarkable call. Would you like that person to contact you privately?
Well, I would like to hear more. Yes, absolutely. And he could, that address could be given. I would like to talk to him about it. As I say, the theory has been around for a long, long time. The question is whether or not there's some kind of official statement coming from, from a research scientist.
Absolutely. All right, Bud.
That's the news.
Yes, that might be big news. But hold on, we've got a couple of things to do. Let's get those done. And let me give Bud's address. Write simply to IF Box 30233, 30233, New York, 10011. Did you get that? IF Box 30233, New York, 10011. and we'll be back to Bud Hopkins in just a moment. I want you to know it.
Okay.
All right. Hello there. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Grants Pass, Oregon.
Yes, KOPE.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello there.
Hello there.
I find this absolutely fascinating.
Good.
Who am I speaking to?
This is Bud Hopkins.
Oh, have you heard of the Sumerian story of how humans came to Earth?
This is, are you talking about the ancient astronaut work, and this is Sitchin's work and so forth?
Yes, about the two brothers who came down from a corrupt planet. Their father was the leader, and his name was phonetically written as a star. One of the brothers had a staff with a snake on it.
Yeah, this answer you've gotten from Sitchin's books, is that right?
Some of them, yes, and some of the ancient writings of the Sumerians.
Right.
I find this absolutely fascinating, and I find it also plausible. Do you? Since they took the fertilized egg of a human being here on Earth and reimplanted it in the egg of the female astronaut, it seems to me so modern in its concept. Then they wouldn't have any idea that this was possible.
Right.
All right.
Well,
thank you. We're way short on time. It's almost mythology.
Essentially, I just hesitate to ever speculate on ancient astronaut issues. There's so much going on. I've had two people call me not too long ago in the past month. Two people call me after they had been returned from an abduction that had ended within about a minute or two from their phone call to me. And to worry about the Sumerians at this point in my life seems a long way away. I'll leave that to the historians.
All right, Bud, we're at the bottom of the hour. It's almost mythology, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
All right, Bud Hopkins is my guest. This is Dreamland on a Sunday night. I'm Art Bell. If you'd like to join us, pick up a telephone. I know it's very busy, but keep trying. You will get through. You're listening to the CBC Network. And Bud Hopkins, good evening, everybody. An unusual opportunity for you to talk to what I think most of us consider to be our nation's premier UFO investigator, Bud Hopkins. Bud, are you still there?
I certainly am, and I'd like to make a comment here. Your point was the man was on a speakerphone a minute ago on the Lawrence Livermore call?
Well, when I first heard him, I thought it was a speakerphone, and it may have been, and it also sounded like a portable because I heard it kind of whooshing around a little bit.
I see. What did he say it was?
What do you mean?
I forgot what he said, what kind of phone it was. I'm a little suspicious of the call, frankly.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a chance to think about it. You thought it was perhaps not real at all.
People don't tend to call and say, I'm calling from Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, to tell you the truth.
It's true.
If someone is from a very highly secure area, making a phone call and having his voice go out and so forth with apparently sensitive material, it's not the sort of thing that you announce on them.
It is true. We're talking careers here.
Yes, exactly. It's much more likely to say I'm a truck driver who stopped at a truck stop here, but I have this information. This is what I have heard or something. Anyway, we can move on, but I just wanted to say for the audience, I may be doing this gentleman an injustice, but I'm not so sure about it.
Let's see what you get in the mail.
Okay.
All right. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Hi, I'd like to...
All right, hold on, sir. Don't do anything yet. Turn off your radio first. That's number one.
Okay.
All right, now tell us where you're calling from.
All right, my name is Eric, and I'm calling from Eugene, Oregon.
Eugene, Oregon. All right, go ahead.
And I'm calling to find out, are you familiar with Al Bielek and his time travel experiments?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how likely are they right now? How likely do you think that they are?
All right, thank you. That's a question about the credibility of Al Bielek.
Yes. Well, that's a hard question for me to answer because I'm not as familiar with it as I should be. I'm aware of it. I know that he has devoted a lot of time to writing about it, lecturing about it, and I would prefer to just let this one kind of dangle. I don't like to step out and pontificate in areas that I'm not as sure as my knowledge and information as I should be.
All right, well,
let this one go.
All right, let's go away from Al Bielek, though, and let me ask you about the Philadelphia experiment. Did something, in your view, Bud, happen?
My general sense is that no, it did not happen in the way it was originally reported. Now, of course, Mr. Moore, who wrote the book about the Philadelphia experiment with Berlitz, I believe, together, has since felt that the evidence is not really compelling that such an event took place. That was a long time ago, and obviously every single one of these issues, such as that amazing event, the disappearance and reconstitution of a ship and so forth, if something like that were feasible, I think we would have used this in one way or another, militarily or commercially, whatnot. One of the problems, of course, with all of these ideas of which verge on conspiracy theory about super duper government military gear or material that could have military usage, is that people forget we went through a war in the Gulf War recently, and of course we had no real special equipment in that war that gave us the ending we would have liked to have had. If we had had some really incredible equipment, I think right now, as I've always said, Saddam Hussein would be sitting in a jail cell right now next to Noriega, and we would still have Bush as president. We would still have the head of the CIA as the head of CIA. The Joint Chiefs of Staff would still be in place, and so on. None of that happened.
All right. Well, that's a really good point. What about the other major event in fairly distant history, the one in New Mexico that Representative Schiff is now going to cause the GAO to apparently investigate?
Well, that's a very different issue because that's has to do with alien technology, not military technology, such as the Philadelphia experiment would indicate. This is an alien event. I have absolute now, after many years of studying the evidence and noticing more evidence as it's accumulated, some very good research. Don Schmidt's been doing wonderful research on that. So is Stan Friedman, a number of people. I think that I definitely feel that something crashed, a UFO crashed, or two, perhaps. There was the speculation that two collided. Bodies were recovered, material was recovered, and I have no doubt about that at this point.
All right. Very good. And on the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Hi, Art. This is Brandy in Bakersfield.
Brandy in Bakersfield. Hi, Brandy.
Hi. I was disappointed because baseball preempted this show, so I've only been listening since 8:30.
Oh, well, we're sorry about that.
Oh, I mean, it's not your fault. The people at KNYE are. But anyway, I wanted to say it's a pleasure to speak with you, Bud. I just wanted to ask you, since you've researched this for many years, do you think that demonology plays any type of role in these abductions? And also, is there any way that Whitley Strieber could also come on the show?
All right.
Take it off the air. Thanks, Art.
All right, thank you. And, of course, there is. I'll answer the second question. Demonology, I'm sure you get that one a lot, Bud.
Yeah. Well, again, as I've tried to explain, we have a basic need to kind of shove the whole alien phenomenon, abduction phenomenon, UFO phenomenon, into the idea of gods or devils. And I do not connect this with any kind of theological beings, demons, just as I don't connect it with theological beings, angels. I think that this is a very distinct phenomenon. Now, I'm not going to say that I don't believe that there are necessarily gods and devils in the real world. I don't want to get into a theological hassle here. We'll get a million calls from people consigning me to hell for my opinion, so I will stay away from that. But I definitely feel that this is its own business. It is not connected with demons. There are very, very possible mistaking identity situations where people feel the child is possessed of a devil or whatnot who is having abduction experiences, and it might be kind of hard for some people to tell. I had a case where a woman here in New York, her parents were rather not very well educated, first-generation Italian family, and they used to bring in the priest every now and then with holy water to bless the apartment because these strange little men with big black eyes were coming through the walls.
Oh, boy.
And what else to do? They must be demons. So there is some confusion here, but I think it is a separate phenomenon.
Well, let me turn the question around. Is that one of the main reasons that we're not told about all this because of the reaction in religious circles?
Well, I mean, that is certainly possible. It creates a lot of problems for religious people, but it is not necessarily an insoluble problem. We have to remember, and I should mention that I have worked with a number of born-again Christians who are also abductees, and there was a problem for them of reconciling what was happening to them to their abduction experiences.
Sure.
And as I pointed out, many years ago, it was believed back in the time of Galileo that if the idea was accepted that we were not the center of the universe, that we were simply in a planet going around the sun amongst many other suns, then that would mean the end of religion, because it was against the Bible, it was this, that, and the other thing, and that was what the theologians of the time believed. And of course, now virtually everybody understands that we are just a planet going in a particular solar system, but that has not damaged religion. Theologians managed to make sense of this and harmonize this new information with the Bible, and Christianity has not suffered as a result. And I think the same thing can happen with this.
All right, good. Well, I want to get off course here. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening. Where are you calling from?
Spokane, Washington.
Spokane, Washington, all right.
Mr. Hopkins.
Yes, sir.
Yes. How many of these abduction cases were preceded by a red light, a ball of red light coming through the wall first, like a probe?
Well, many, many people who have had abduction experiences at one point or another have noticed unusual lights or balls of light in the room with them, coming through the wall, coming down the hall, whatnot. Often people describe these lights as acting as if they're intelligent, as if they're looking at you. Now, I'm curious about, since you raised the question, that you must have had an experience along these lines.
Yes, sir. Much like the one the young lady related about 15 minutes ago where she was paralyzed.
Yeah, well, that's a classic account. Yeah. What was your experience, sir?
Well, I woke up. I called before and talked to Linda Howe about this, and also Mr. Bell. But I woke up to a droning, whirring noise in the room, just whirring, a mechanical droning. That woke me up. And I looked up and he had a gigantic crucifix on the wall, and the ball of light came out the crucifix, and it just pulsated there, about the size of a baseball. And then it tracked the ceiling, went over the ceiling, went down her side of the room, and I tried to wake her up. And my girlfriend's really light sleeper. I said, wake up, please wake up, look at this. And she wouldn't wake up. Yeah. And when it got on her back, it pulsated for 30 minutes on her back, and she was sleeping on her stomach. It then proceeded off her back onto my chest. Now, once it got on my chest, I couldn't scream out no more. Yeah. I couldn't move. I started sweating because I was fighting it. I was trying to sit up in bed, but I could not move. All my eyeballs could do was go round and round. Yeah. Next thing I passed out or went to sleep. Yeah. I woke up about an hour and a half later, and the ball of light was leaving my chest, going off my body to the floor, back on the crucifix, where it just pulsated for about a minute. And it just went into the crucifix and out the wall. And it took me about half an hour to recover before I could get up. Right. Now, but I was going to ask you, have you ever had anybody, do a study? My last name is Simon. And have you ever had anybody do a study to see how many people with religious last names, are being tracked and like Abraham?
I honestly, Mr. Simon, I don't think there's any reason to think that any particular person is being singled out for this because of their religious beliefs, their last name, or anything of that sort. I mean, this is a worldwide phenomenon. We're getting this in areas where there are no Christians to speak of. For instance, these things are occurring in China, in the Orient, in the backwaters of Africa and South America and so forth, with people with very, very definitely non-Christian beliefs. This is not something that is limited to people with a particular religious background. I think that's a coincidence in your case, sir, but what you described, though, certainly seems like something that should be looked into. So, again, if you'd like to write, I can put you in touch with somebody perhaps near you.
Boy, the MO is beginning to sound familiar now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, Art, let me tell you that when we did the Roper survey, one of the questions we asked was, have you ever, and these were not beliefs, these were, have you had these experiences? One of the questions they asked was, have you ever seen unusual lights or balls of light in a room with you, which neither you nor anyone else could explain? And actually, 8% of the American people said yes to that, which is extraordinary.
That is extraordinary.
So even if you say that's 4 times too many, say, but you cut it down to mistakes or, people misread things, you're still dealing with a very high percentage. And even if it's, as we found with the Roper survey, using 5 basic indicator questions, one of which dealt with the paralysis, just as both of these people have explained, have described it very eloquently. Periods of missing time where they have no idea where they were, how it happened, or why it happened, and so on. With these 5 questions, we came out with 2% of the American people said yes to 4 out of 5 of these questions, which would indicate if they are abductees, and it's certainly likely, we're dealing with, say, perhaps 5 million Americans who have been through this.
That's a lot of occurrences, but hold on just a moment. We'll come right back to you. Back to the telephones, and on the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Where are you calling from?
San Jose, California.
San Jose, good.
Hi, Art. Hello, Bud. This is Tim from San Jose.
Well, Tim, how are you?
I'm fine. How have you been?
Very well.
I just wanted to share something with you. Yesterday morning, my daughter and her mom had an experience. They had a visitation. Her mom woke up with an extremely sore throat, nauseous, nasals were stinging, disoriented. She had a blue fluid coming from her nose, one nostril.
Oh, boy.
She threw up, and she called me. I was curious if you'd heard of any sort of blue fluid with other cases like that.
Well, that's coming from her nostril. Was there any way of saving any fluid?
She wasn't thinking of that at the time.
Yeah. We have a lot of different strange fluids from various bodily orifices which have created stains, and we have saved the material. It's very hard to analyze some of this stuff if you don't have much of it, and if it's very embedded in fabric, it's quite expensive to do it. But things like that have been reported more often, actually, kind of a brown fluid.
Yeah.
How about your daughter?
She seemed to be okay. We took her to an emergency pediatrician just to make sure. I tried to share this phenomenon with him. I showed him the pamphlet that you and the Bigelow Foundation wrote. Unusual personal experiences, I think it is. He wasn't receptive at all. He laughed about it, shrugged it off, and didn't even want to take the pamphlet.
Did she report anything specifically happening, her recollections, the daughter?
No, she had no recollection of the event.
But was anything physical?
Not to her, but to her mother, yeah.
More to her mother than to her, yeah. Well, let's hope she wasn't taken.
No.
But, well, thanks very much, Tim. I'm sorry this happened. These have been extremely difficult situations to handle for a family, but I think you're doing a fine job.
Would you recommend somebody like that, Bud, investigate further, contact somebody, find out if, in fact, the child or the mother or both were taken?
Well, I certainly would. The mother has worked with a psychologist in the area who's very, very helpful. Has done a very good job, and since I know Tim, there are various people in the area, including another pediatrician and others who could be helpful. We do have quite a group. This is generally in the San Francisco area. We have some very good people out there. Tim has got some support, which is very helpful to him. And
but is there any geographic area that is visited more frequently, apparently, or is it just simply completely random?
It's very, very hard to tell because obviously what you hear about is only what the press or letter writers or whatever are willing to present. And of course, if it's a very conservative community where this is frowned upon, you're not going to get people talking about it as openly. For instance, in New York City, I have people reporting these experiences who are, let's say, white middle-class people, etc. I have quite a few African-American background people and Hispanics, but very few Orientals. And it isn't that I think this isn't happening to Oriental people, but I think that in such numbers, I think that there's a reticence, perhaps, as a societal norm in that particular group to talk about this sort of thing.
Some sort of cultural bias.
Exactly. So if you go to, for instance, a Bible Belt town in the South, there might be a lot going on, but it might be attributed to demons, or it might be something that people feel hesitant to talk about, and so you simply would think, well, we have a big blank in this area, we're not getting any reports, and yet that might not be the case.
No, that's a good point. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Art. Fascinating show this evening, because I'm curious, going back to when you're talking about a lot of this happens to children when they're younger, have you ever just discovered that this was either a cover-up for child abuse or that child abusers have used this guise or for UFO abductions.
All right, or Bud, the other way around.
Well, that's a very interesting point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this has been let's say the explanation du jour of many groups of skeptics on the subject, that the essential point is people they believe are being sexually abused and are somehow blanking out that memory and substituting for it a fantasy where they bring in aliens, which is an issue they can handle better than the fact that it was old Uncle Sid or Aunt Martha or whoever who did the abusing. And of course, if that were the case, we would expect to find amongst abductees a very low level of people reporting sexual abuse. And in fact, from the work that was done by Dr. Kenneth Ring and other people with abductees, we get just as high a percentage of abductees reporting sexual abuse by normal humans in the bad old way as we get with people who have not had abductions. So there's no sense that then these people are, as a group, are substituting abduction experiences. Since they're remembering the child abuse too. What's more, and I'll give you a very quick and very sad story, I have a number of cases like this. In this case, told me by the mother, her little boy, and this is rather graphic, and I'm sorry about this, but her little boy at the age of, I think he was 5 or 4, she was divorced. He was having, the husband had visiting rights, and the little boy would stay with him on the weekends. And the mother said, who's a registered nurse, she found her little boy in his bedroom with a screwdriver, which he was trying to insert in his rectum.
Oh, my God.
And he told her, when she was, of course, horrified, he said, that's what the man does. He uses a tool or something like this. Well, at any rate, she naturally assumed sexual abuse on the part of her husband, who vehemently denied it, but she went to court and got a court order barring her husband permanently any visiting rights whatsoever with the child. And the husband moved away, and of course, within a couple of months, the child was again talking, and he had some damage to the tissues, rectal tissues. He said the men had come in again, and they had big black eyes, and they were he was frightened, and they had used some instrument there, and plus a whole other range of things he was describing.
I wonder how many times Uncle Sid is in jail because of an abduction.
Well, I can assure you that it must have happened, because I have many cases where, a number of cases, one in which a woman had thought that she had been raped by her father at the age of 12. And that she had harbored these feelings all her life, never accused him. He never really changed his behavior. But the description of the rape scene, which I can't even go into, it's very, very odd. There's nothing about it that sounds like a rape, but her father was present. And as we explored the experience, it seems that it was an abduction of the two of them. And at one point, he was in the ship without clothes, as she was in the ship without clothes, and things are being done to the two of them. So it was interpreted as a rape. But I can assure you that just even the questioning from what she remembered consciously had nothing about it that suggested violence. She remembered that she was lying down, that she was unable to move, that she had no clothes on whatsoever. There was no sense of any violence or struggle. She felt that something was inserted into her body. There was no sense of another figure, of another body in relation to hers, etc. That her father was standing off to one side, unmoving.
Nevertheless, Bud, it isn't really a defense you'd use anyway, is it? It wasn't me, it was the grave.
No, it wouldn't hold any water, and I really do feel, there may be some cases. I would not ever say that there aren't any cases where what the gentleman suggested might not have happened, where somebody could have invented some sort of story. Lord knows the mind is very fertile when it comes to trying to cover up trauma and rationalize.
It is. It reaches out and tries to explain. Bud, we're at the top of the hour, so relax for about 5 minutes. We'll do one more hour.
Okay.
Bud Hopkins is my guest. Fascinating night. We'll be back with more in about 5.
A lot of the abduction accounts talk about implants, and it's like in the nose, nasal area. My question is, why don't we see these devices, and it would seem to me that if someone felt they had an implant in their nasal area, that they'd go and get some type of scan, like an MRI or a PET scan.
Right.
It seemed like it'd be really easy to detect something like that with the technology that we have today.
All right, well, that is a good question.
Very good question.
And have we detected any, Bud?
Yeah. Now, this is a complicated subject I'm getting much more interested in as time goes on. There have been, I know now personally of 2 cases where an X-ray indicated the presence of a strange object. And before the X-ray, before anybody could do anything about the situation, in one case the X-ray was not in the possession of the person with the implant until a week after it was taken. That person was re-abducted, found herself bleeding from the nostril when she woke up in the morning, and evidently our little friends in the sky had come back and removed it. As if when the X-ray was taken, some alarm bell goes off, so to speak, and they come and take it. The second case happened to be a woman in whose child, it was actually the child involved, was about a 5-year-old girl who had been having abduction experiences, and she had an accident completely unconnected with UFOs. She fell off her bicycle or some such thing, and they thought she had fractured her skull, and she was taken to the hospital, whereupon the doctors, this again in Italy, discovered a strange object. By the time she was taken back to the army base where her father was stationed in Germany, and she was re-X-rayed, again, the object was no longer there. Now, I have those X-rays in my possession, and they, beyond any doubt, show foreign objects of metallic origin. These are have been looked at by Dr. Paul Cooper, who's a neurosurgeon, who is a friend of mine who looks at such things for me. I have recently received a case from of again a woman, an abductee, who in another accident thought she'd fractured a skull, and the radiological report describes a metallic object in the parasagittal area of the brain. I know through the investigator Barbara Bartolek, who's done some very fine work on this. I have other images of, actually it's a videotape of the X-ray and MRI showing a foreign object in the medulla, and another one which shows an odd object with a very clear-cut symmetrical shape in the hip bone. And the man had been abducted, had terrible pain in his hip, and even a scar right opposite where this object seemed to be. I don't know what Barbara Bartolek is doing with those cases, but the point is the ones that are in the head are in places where it would be extremely dangerous to try to retrieve them. There have been some objects that have been recovered from the nostril, and 2 from the underside of different men's penises, of all things. These objects are not radio-opaque, do not have any kind of heavy metallic makeup. There are a lot of more organic elements, carbon, silicon, and so forth.
I believe, I don't know on what program, but I saw somebody actually holding one, Bud, which appeared to be triangular in shape and kind of crystalline.
Yeah, that's the glass-like object. We don't know much about, I've held that in my hand, too.
Oh, you have?
Actually, I've held several of these things. However, this is the big problem. The objects that have been recovered so far, unlike these metallic objects we have not recovered, are made of enough familiar elements, especially, as I said, silicon, carbon, and so forth, that no scientist is going to say there's no way that this object couldn't have originated on Earth. It'd be a bit of a problem to imagine how an object lodges on the underside of under the skin on the underside of a man's penis. But nevertheless, it's possible to imagine an alien implant which is made of fairly neutral materials, but which is charged in such a way that it does what they need it to do. We really have no way of knowing what these objects do, why they're there, and I always use the example to show how complicated it would be to guess alien motivations.
All right, well, what about this, Bud? In the case of the ones you talked about where they have it in a portion of the brain, is anybody talking to these people about signing a release for when they die?
That's what I would like to do. That's what we have to do. The idea of autopsies, that's something we have to go into. Now, it's very possible that these objects somehow can be removed by the aliens without leaving scars or marks. Obviously, their technology, if they can move a person through a closed surface, presumably they can move a metallic implant through the skull without leaving a hole. How that happens, we have no way of knowing. It sounds totally off the wall, and yet the evidence would suggest that's the case. At the same time, that sometimes when these things are put in the nostril or the ear, there is bleeding.
But are we kind of like the caveman tinkering with the Sony?
You might be. But I use the example that if you imagine a very primitive Stone Age tribe in the jungles of New Guinea or something like that coming across the body of a dead anthropologist and finding a pacemaker in that man's body, they would not have the slightest idea as to the function of that object.
Exactly so. All right. Well, let's keep moving. A lot of phone calls. And on the first-time caller line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Where are you calling from, please?
Reno, Nevada.
Reno, Nevada. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Sorry, am I on the air?
Yeah, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Bud, this kind of goes with the last caller. I was wondering if there were any other symptoms that identify abduction victims. And can I just kind of run down a list?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Number 1, unexplained fast-healing injuries. Number 2, constant bloody noses. Number 3, blackouts or what I would call unexplained timeouts.
Yeah, well, that's more to the point, yeah.
Okay, well, I got a whole list here, though, and there's only about 3 more. High intelligence in the victims or unsubstantiated strength. Substance abuse in people that may have been past abduction victims.
All right, caller, thank you.
Well,
is there any...
The list is, I mean, a lot of the things you said are very important. Now, the issue of unsubstantiated intelligence, we have to also know, I've got a case of a man who was abducted who was rather severely retarded. I also have cases, it's one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard of. 2 people who were comatose in a hospital who had been in a comatose state for a long time, evidently after a UFO visit to the hospital showed puncture marks in the abdomen of the woman and an incision on the underside of the penis of the man. And these are people who hadn't been conscious for months. So it's hard to know. Now, also the substance abuse issue does come up because these are very psychologically undermining experiences. One is thrown into self-doubt from the beginning. Am I crazy? What's going on here? This can't be real, et cetera, et cetera. And this can lead to that sort of problem. So much of what you said is accurate.
So is there any...
for bringing this up.
Right. Is there any particular profile of abductees? Are they brighter? Are they lower on the scale of intelligence?
It's totally across the board. And the demographics, when we did the Roper survey of people who had answered yes to 4 out of 5 of our indicator questions, we thought were possibly abductees, just fell across all ethnic, racial, gender, socioeconomic, educational levels, and so forth. There was no consistency.
All right. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening. Where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm calling from Seattle, Washington.
Seattle, yes.
Bud? Yes, hi, Bud. Listen, I've been trying to discuss this situation for a long time, and I tried calling that number out in Arizona, and they would never return my call. Here's what happened. The night that all of the lights went out on the East Coast, I think it was like 65 or 66. Well, that afternoon, while I was with my parent, my mother, we were driving in West Covina, California, and I would say I saw flying saucer. This thing was about, I'd say it was between 7,000 and 8,000 feet. I was amazed at the time because I was a young fellow, about 15. I saw 3 or 4 jet planes following it, and I noticed that they fired what I thought was a missile, and the thing exploded. And it was headed eastbound. This would have been toward the Pomona area. And that night, as I say, all of the lights went out on the East Coast. The lights also went out in the San Gabriel Valley of California around 8:30 that night.
Well, now you said you reported this to a number in Arizona. I'm not sure what number. There are lots of numbers that come and go here.
Yes.
What I would appreciate if you could write to us at the address that we've given, and we'd have somebody get in touch with you, get some more information.
Yes, be happy to.
And I thank you very much.
All right, thank you, caller. But what about effects of UFOs, electromagnetic effects on radios, television, automobiles, any sense to any of that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It goes with the territory. We again don't know whether this is deliberate, whether they can sort of zap someone's car, or whether it's a side effect of whatever propulsion system they're using, whatever that is. But just to tell you a really fascinating recent situation, Dr. David Jacobs was working with a woman who was quite petrified. She thought something was going to happen to her that night. She called him. Her husband was away. The two children were asleep. Anyway, to make a long story short, he got her to set up a video camera in the bedroom, which she had used on other occasions, trained on the bed. And she went to sleep. There was enough light, and it was set at half speed, so it would run for 8 hours.
Right.
She went to sleep with the children in the bed. When she woke up in the morning, there was she'd been asleep about 8 hours, and there was still 25% of the tape unexposed. And it was still running. When she turned the tape on, it showed the image of her waking up, which she did not remember, getting out of bed and carrying each of the children away from the bedroom. So the bed was empty.
Oh my!
And the very next shot, she was back in bed with the two children, but it did not show her walking from the camera back to the bed.
That gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Now, that means that camera had stopped, whether it was shut off at the source or whether the power was interrupted, and it was off for the time that the abduction evidently took place. And so when she was placed back in bed, this is all speculation, but when she was placed back in bed with the children and the UFO left and the power resumed, the camera just started going again. But here you have an impossibility. There was no way that the film could have stopped and started this way without somebody doing it or some interruption to the power supply.
All right,
otherwise, she would have filmed herself getting in bed.
All right, I've got one other question in this area, and I'll get to it as soon as we come back. Take a brief break. Bud Hopkins is my guest, and we'll be right back. The hard one to test is right. All right, on the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Hello. I'm pleased to finally get through.
Where are you, sir?
I'm calling from the Reno area.
Reno, okay. KOH, no doubt.
Yes, absolutely. Bud, I have a little description of an incident I had while flying in an airplane myself as pilot. I'm a private pilot. I was eastbound out of Sacramento, California, heading towards Placerville, just a little south of Mather Air Force Base, which was an active base. It was about 10 years ago. I don't remember the exact date. I remember it as springtime. And off in the distance, about my 11 o'clock range or field of view, I saw a very bright light. My first interpretation was it was probably a B-52 out there with his landing light on approach to Mather. So I just studied it, watched it, and kept a note of it because he was out there in the direction I was flying. And all of a sudden, this light proceeded north at an extremely high rate of speed. And I mean extremely. It went almost out of sight within, say, 2 seconds. That's fast. And the funny part about it, if that was an aircraft of any type, a vehicle that navigates through the air and had a headlight on the front of it or a landing light on the front of it, if he turned away from me, the light would disappear. Exactly, yeah. And this light did not. It grew dim as it proceeded into the distance. And I just kind of logged that myself in my own mind to say, well, I wonder if I'm going to see something like that ever again, which I never did. And I have heard of similar reports, but that's the only one I ever had.
Well, that's a good one, and I'd appreciate it if you wrote in so we could get some of the data down. And there are people who collect these reports. Incidentally, I don't want to do we alarm you, but I have dealt with 3 different pilots, private pilots, who had UFO sightings and who had, while they were flying, and actually 2 of them were daytime, 1 at night, and they had missing time experiences in the air. In the air longer than they had fuel for.
Happily that's not happened to me yet.
All right. I know. That's why I said I didn't want to alarm you. You just got to look at one. The one you saw was just going by, but I mean, literally, this seems to have happened
within the time period of that experience, or sometime later.
No, while they were in the air.
All right, and I want to interject here, if I might. Caller question. You remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that magic moment where the controller said, "Do you want to report a UFO?"
Yes.
Did you?
I didn't see that movie.
Did you?
But you reminded me. I asked approach control if they saw something on the radar that proceeded north at a high rate of speed, and they reported negative. And I have another question for you, Bud.
Sure. Very quickly.
Do you recall back in the 50s and into the 60s, there was the Air Force had an operation called Operation Blue Book. It was supposedly the big government collection of data on UFOs.
Yeah, it was called Project Blue, and it was very little, actually. It was billed as big, but it was little. But go ahead.
Well, was that ever declassified? Have you ever had access to the
Oh, yeah, the material was declassified, but what's happened is that some other reports that we have found out about or were declassified separately, material was released about some very good sightings. We found out they were not in Project Blue Book.
Really?
And so the suggestion was that the really best cases were not put there. So it's a very ambiguous story. It's complicated.
Yes, I have a little anecdotal information on that.
Very quickly,
Okay, I have a friend who was in Germany in the Air Force subsequent to that, who was highly classified. I mean, he was working in highly classified projects. Ran across an officer who was in that Operation Blue Book. Asked, say, hey, what about this? You know, we're down here in the vault. Tell me about it. He says, I do not want to discuss it, and that is the end of that.
All right, well, that has to be the end of that, too. Thank you very much, caller. And, Bud, we're going to have to take a break here at the bottom of the hour. Do you have any quick comments on what he said?
No, we'll be when we come back.
All right, very good. We'll do that indeed at that time. You're listening to the CBC Radio Network. Want to remind everybody, for copies of this program, you can call at any time, 24 hours a day, area code 503-664-7966. 503-664-7966.
Glad to make it.
Where are you?
I'm in Gig Harbor.
Gig Harbor, Washington, all right?
Yeah, KBI.
Yes, go right ahead.
A very weird time loss, and I think the whole town experienced the same thing, Art.
The whole town?
Well, tell us about it.
Okay. I was leaving. I live on the Olympic Peninsula, Gig Harbor. I was going to my summer home up by Canada at Twin Lakes in Colville. And in a town called Ephrata, which is across the Columbia River, I hit a stoplight, and I was stopped there. I was the first car in line. There were no cars behind me. A very odd thing, it was about 110 degrees out, the middle of the summer, very hot area. Someone in a full jumpsuit, kind of a bright orange jumpsuit, was crossing the road. And, I mean, the whole thing was very unusual. Basically, I had what I felt was a time lapse, a blank out. When I came back to, there were about 30 cars behind me. No one was honking any horns. Everyone seemed to witness the same thing. And the person was gone. The light was green. No one was upset. Everyone seemed very content. And I found it highly unusual.
Well, absolutely. Were the cars on the opposite side coming towards you stopped, too?
There were no cars on the other side at all.
But 30 on your side, which is...
Yeah, it was like a city block backed up behind me. But
and nothing coming towards you.
Pardon?
and nothing coming towards you. That's very odd.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, tell me about the man in the orange jumpsuit. How did he move, and did he look normal and so forth? What did you...
He was walking apparently like a normal human being. And I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like this. I have no explanation for what happened.
Well, I would like to hear from you about that, sir. If you could write to me at the address that I'm sure Art will give again, I would like to follow up on this because we have cases like this which involve quite a few cars. These experiences, many people in a cliche way think that this is just something that happens to one person at a time, but I have cases which involve conceivably hundreds of people at once. And certainly in abduction cases where I've investigated them where the same experience happened to everybody, 7 people at once and so forth. But your situation, I think, should be looked into. Do you have any idea of how much time elapsed?
See, that's the whole thing is I'm really not certain because well, things like this happen out of the blue.
Yeah. Did you ever dream about this afterwards?
No, I really didn't. I told my wife about it. I told people about it, and everybody kind of said, well, you know, you probably just kind of heat exhaustion or something like that. But
well, you send me a letter and with your name, address, and maybe I could give you a phone call back because it's something I'd like to follow up.
All right, good.
Thank you very much.
Please do that, caller. And, Bud, there are a lot of plane crashes, not a lot, but a significant number, and, of course, car crashes. And I guess I want to ask, could some of them be the result of some sort of time loss and improper recovery?
Well, things like that could happen. You know, I obviously the after effects of these experiences are unfortunate enough just in psychologically that I hate to suggest even more possible problems to people.
Yeah.
But things have happened. I did look into an automobile accident once that seems to actually a couple of them that seem to have had causes related to this where it would seem nothing was done deliberately, but in one case it seems the car was stopped and the people were switched off or taken, and then the car was started up before the people were fully conscious and an accident occurred.
Oh, boy. All right. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Good evening.
Turn off your radio, please.
You bet. Right now.
All right, and tell us where you're calling from.
Good evening. Hello?
Yes, hello. Tell us where you're calling from, sir.
Sacramento, but they won't publish or they won't broadcast your stations. I got 780 in San Francisco. That's very clear.
All right.
Two questions. Question to Bud Hopkins. I wrote him a letter a couple of years ago about a crash of a UFO in Jacksonville under the Naval Air Station, 1964. And he had so many letters coming in that he sent me a foreign letter back. And I tried to give him as many details as I could. They found 3 bodies in this about, this craft was about 25 feet diameter. The people were about 36 inches high. That's about it.
And were you involved in this personally, or is it?
No, I was stopped on the highway. They had all kinds of police, fire, everybody, the Navy, and I went to the Naval Base next day. I was interviewing the people there, and
Now, are you certain you wrote to me rather than to some other organization?
Yeah, but I wrote to you.
You did? Okay.
Well, I wrote to Stan Friedman, too.
Yeah, well, I'll have to look into it in my files. Would you ever send me a postcard with your name and address and explain it so I can then look up your letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, do that, caller. Send him.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry. I hope that I, didn't just drop this one. Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Is it hard to handle the amount of mail that you get, Bud?
Oh, it's extraordinary, and it's I'm still getting. I figure, even though the books have been out for quite a while, Intruders Missing Time, I'm still getting probably 2 new cases, potential cases a day.
Oh, brother.
And some of these people are calling in tears and terrified, and I have some people working with me and some volunteers, and I've gotten some funding and so forth. But our organization, that's one of the things with Intruders Foundation, we have a newsletter, and we're just about to do another one. We're way behind on getting it out. It's 22 pages. I believe that's it. And we're going to be dealing with children's experiences and how to handle the problem with your little child is reporting these experiences. But at any rate, if people subscribe, it's $25 a year and join and that entitles you to 4 of the newsletters plus special reports from time to time and the knowledge that you're helping to support
a referral service, which is national.
All right. And I presume they could get that through the same address. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. That same address.
All right.
If they ask for information, we will send them material.
All right. And that address is IF, Box 30233, New York, New York, zip code 10011. That's IF, Box 30233. New York, New York, 10011. Do I have it correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right, good. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Yes, this is Brian from Seattle.
Yes, Brian.
And this is going to sound crazy, but of course everything you're talking about to, someone who's not really, well. Anyway,
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. I haven't been listening for about 10 minutes, so I don't know what you've been talking about, but about the abductions and the implants?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and of course, we enter into these discussions. You have levels of credibility and proof that really work along a mathematical scale. Like the more you can really prove, the less you really find out. So I would, as a preliminary statement, you might want to listen more to the uncredible or the people you might be able to really discredit their information because they smoke and they drink and that kind of thing. Anyway, I have this thing in my nose. And it's like, I always wondered what it was, and I've got these things in my ears, too. Mm-hmm. But they're really small, and they seem organic, and I didn't know what it was, maybe like some kind of a calcium deposit or something. But I don't know. And, for me, it's not a scary thing, because that's kind of me, in a way.
Well, have you had them, how do you know they're there?
Well, I can feel them.
Yeah.
Just very slightly, but I know they're there.
Uh-huh.
See, here's the thing. You're talking about credibility. You're saying I'm going to have them checked out and all this kind of stuff. And here's the very thing you were saying about, well, gee, now that the X-ray showed it up, then they came and took it back or something.
Caller, do you have any reason to believe they're not calcium deposits?
Well, no. However,
well, my feeling is if you're really concerned about it, curious about it, I'd really have it looked at by an ENT man. That's what you really need to do.
What?
And he can tell you whether it's strange or whether it's an explanation. And
in other words, caller, go to the doctor.
No,
you could, we can have a guy help you out a lot with this, and you could help us too. So.
I get it. Okay, all right. Well, nice talking to you. You have a happy Easter. Okay.
Yeah, all right,
you too. Thank you.
Interesting. He calls you as though you are going to declare they are suddenly alien objects, and I guess people have to go out and find out for themselves. On the wildcard line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Yes, Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Bell, I think most reported cases of abduction by aliens are not true, but there are some authentic cases, and these are examples of a government program of mind control in which people are given an hypnotic suggestion that they have been kidnapped by aliens. So if the listeners want the truth about this, they should get a copy of Martin Cannon's book, The Controllers, from a mail order service called Prevailing Winds Research in Santa Barbara.
All right. Well, thank you.
I know about Martin Cannon's theories, and I think that the government does a lot of nasty things. Perhaps some branches have done some nasty things, but it has nothing to do with explaining abduction accounts, because if this was the case, it would have had to have started practically under Grover Cleveland or something like that in terms of the president.
All right. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, where are you, sir?
This is another Art from Edmonds, Washington.
Edmonds, Washington. All right. Good, Art.
Mm-hmm. As I listen to your program, I'm also sitting here reading the April issue of Harmony Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And the lion's share of this magazine covers the same topic that you're talking about. I just wondered if Bob would know some of the people they mentioned. One of them is a Bob Lazar, Lazar.
Right.
Who is a propulsion system engineer who claims to have been hired to examine one of the discs that they had found, and he claims that it is propelled by gravity waves.
Yes, all right. Listen on the air. Bud, not Bob, but Bud, are you familiar with the Lazar story?
Oh, yes,
sure you are.
Yes. Yeah. And George Knapp is the investigator who's done the most careful work in relation to the Lazar case, and it's an ambiguous case, but there seems to be some solid evidence for his claims.
It's an extremely difficult topic to go into at any depth, and since it's outside my area of expertise, really, I think George Knapp would be the man to talk to about that.
All right, and we do speak with him frequently. Stand by, Bud. Stand by just 1 second. We'll be right back to you. All right, back to Bud Hopkins. Are you there, Bud?
I certainly am.
All right, time is short. On our toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Hi, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Richland, Washington.
Richland, yes, ma'am.
My name is Gail. I'm curious to know what Bud's opinion is on speculation that our government is well aware of the abductions and the alien things that are going on, but either can't do anything about it and so keep it hushed up, or they're getting something in return and so keep it hushed up.
All right, I think his view is the first rather than the latter. What?
Yes, we've gone into that, and I definitely think they're aware. I don't have any doubt about that. But I don't think there's any swap involved. We're not getting anything out of this.
All right, on the wild card line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Reno.
Reno, Nevada, yes.
Bud, is there any other technique of remembering an abduction experience other than hypnosis that you know of?
All right, thank you.
That's a good question. There is another technique that has been used, and of course, people have talked about sodium pentothal and that type of thing, although that's not something I have any use for myself. Hypnotic regression works very, very well. There is a new technique which is being used by some psychologists. It involves rapid movement of the eyes I don't know what the motor connection is with memory, but there seems to be one, and it has been used successfully by a number of people to elicit information. You would have to go to somebody trained in that technique, but hypnosis is a very useful technique in the meantime, and safe.
All right, good. On the wild card line, you're on there with Bud Hopkins. Hello there. Where are you, please?
In Seattle. This is Jackie.
All right, Jackie, you're hard to hear. Get close to the phone and ask a question.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. What's up, Jackie?
Hi, Bud.
Hi.
I was just wondering if you noticed any significant trends in UFOs, like in the things that they're doing.
Trends, changes. Well, yes, in the sense that new things are coming to light all the time, and we don't know whether they're a new trend or whether they've been going on for a long time. This particular thing I'm going to mention, I think has been going on a long time, and that is the UFO occupants seem very interested in how we form relationships. And I just dealt with a couple who are about to get married, and they're in their 20s. And when they first met, exactly a year ago, they realized that they knew one another. They didn't know how, but they know a lot about each other, and there were some amazing connections. I mean, for instance, one of them remembered that the other had a birthmark on his chest.
Oh, boy.
They knew a lot about their backgrounds and how they looked and talked when they were younger and how they fixed their hair and everything else. And it seems that they had been abducted over different periods of time at intervals and brought together as if the aliens were studying long-term the way relationships are formed. Believe it or not, I have now maybe 6 or 7 cases like this. Now, this is something that's not really ever been made public, and I don't think it's all that common. But it definitely seems that this has been a systematic arrangement, and even to this point that there's a man in the United States in his 40s who, when he met an English woman here in the United States for the first time, she's about 41, they realized that they've known each other. They couldn't place where. They're both abductees, and when we looked into these experiences, they were first abducted when they were children.
That implies,
one from England, one from the United States.
That implies alien matchmaking.
Well, it sort of does, the great dating service in the sky.
Yeah, that's right.
But the basic point is that these people assumed all along when they remembered that they knew somebody, they assumed, well, it's a dream or something. I'm having a dream companion, but it's real.
Wow. Toll-free line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Time is short. Where are you calling from?
Tacoma, Washington.
All right, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Mr. Hopkins.
Yes, sir.
I just a little while ago, I read a book by Jacobs called Secret Life.
Very good book, too. An excellent book.
And I'm right smack dab in the middle of a book called Abduction by Dr. John Mack.
Yes. John, these are two of my closest colleagues and friends.
Well, it's interesting what they both say. My question is this. These hybrid fetuses, children, there seems to be 2 scenarios to what they're doing with them. And I was wondering, which one do you believe? What are they doing with these children?
Well, I'm not sure that we have a scenario as to what they're doing with them. We really don't know what they're doing with them. That's the central question, actually, as David Jacobs has said about our point of knowledge right now. What are the hybrids for? Where are they going? We don't really know. And I haven't read all of John Mack's book fully. It just came out, and I don't know that he presents any scenario for the use of the future of the hybrids, nor does Dave Jacobs. Well, what were you thinking, sir?
Well, he's gone. These are both people that I have interviewed and will interview again.
Right.
All right, very good. We've got to move on. One more, perhaps. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Good evening. Hello?
Hello there.
Where are you, sir? Hello? Are you there, caller? No, I guess not. Well, in that case, we'll make it this one. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Bud Hopkins. Hello.
Hi, I'm calling from Albuquerque.
Albuquerque, yes.
I'd like to ask him if he thinks UFOs have anything to do with the Lost Squadron, when those 5 planes disappeared.
Oh, yes, the Lost Squadron. Bud, you remember they thought they found it, and then I guess they didn't? What is the story?
Yeah, this is one of the Bermuda Triangle issues. That story has been pretty much analyzed and discussed and explained away as a series of genuine navigational mistakes, people caught in a storm, and there doesn't seem to be a big mystery attached to it. Now, other things have disappeared. There was a pilot who disappeared, Fred Valentius, off the coast of Australia in 1977, and he was last heard talking on the radio. I've heard the radio tape of the broadcast to Melbourne Tower. That's a genuine case. The Lost Squadron, quote unquote, which did happen, seems to have a natural explanation, though, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I guess they say leave them wanting more, and you are. It's a full board we've got here. Bud, go ahead and give your address out one more time, would you please?
Okay. You can write to me, care of IF. That's Box 30233, New York, New York, 10011. And I can be reached there if you want information, a sample of the IF bulletin, information about subscriptions, or especially if you have something to report about personal experiences, we would like to hear from you. And thank you very much.
Well, Bud, it has been a pleasure having you on, and I hope we can tap your expertise at some future date. Would you possibly be able to come back?
No, I think I would. It's kind of late here in New York for me, 1 o'clock in the morning. Us city boys have to get up early.
All right, Bud.
But at any rate, I certainly enjoy the program very much, Art, and I especially appreciate our listeners who've been so open about talking about their own personal experiences here.
It is amazing, isn't it? Thank you, Bud.
Thank you.
Take care. That's Bud Hopkins. He's been our guest for the last 3 hours. I want to thank you all for being here. As I said, there is never enough time. If you would like or even need, and I can understand that after hearing it, a copy of this program or any of the other programs in the Dreamland series, please call the following telephone number 24 hours a day to get it. It is area code 503-664-7966. Let me repeat that. It's an important number if you want a copy of this program or any other Dreamland program. Area code 503-664-7966. Next Sunday, we'll be back with another Dreamland. On behalf of everybody at the network, I'm Art Bell. Thank you.